Greetings. I'm back like I left something. I'm back like I never left. I'm back like Sankofa. Let me share that link there. Okay, there's share, so it's good. Let me share the invite link. Link. To, participate. Okay. Okay, I have found these quotes about Punt, and it is indeed from the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt. Now, page 317. I will read directly from the source. So, there is still some debate regarding the precise location of Punt, which was once identified with the region of modern Somalia. A strong argument has now been made for its location in either southern Sudan or the Eritrean region of Ethiopia. Another quote, the same book, The Oxford History of Ancient Egypt. During the reign of Sahura, there is a reference to an expedition to procure exotic goods from Punt, an African country somewhere between the upper reaches of the Nile and the Somali coast. Later on, it says Mentuhotep III was also the first Middle Kingdom ruler to send an expedition to the East African land of Punt. So there doesn't say any specific location, but it says East African land of Punt. Furthermore, here it says Mentuhotep III and Senuseret the first maintained trading links with the African region of Punt, probably located somewhere in the vicinity of modern Eritrea. Now, the golden age of the Moor, page 67, this is James E. Bronson and Runoko Rashidi. He says the purest and most abundant sources of frankincense and myrrh were in southern Arabia and Somalia. Punt with a question mark. So they're wondering, they're not sure, probably Punt was Somalia. Okay. There's a distinction. Southern Arabia and Somalia. Arabia was known for having some sought after frankincense. Same book, of the Nature of the Moor, page 126. Dana Reynolds, she put troglodytes occupied the coastal region along both sides of the Red Sea. In their country was the land of Punt, now identified as the modern-day Mersagawasi, a port town in the Horn of Africa. There was another Punt called Opone. Further south, around the time of the Christian era, and Mogadishu was said to have been called the Pearl of the land of Punt. So I think that's all the quotes for Punt. Here, this is the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt. It mentions an expedition to Kush, Upper Nubia, and that the East African kingdom of Punt was visited by the king's official. You have the name there, which is a bit complicated. Kenti Ketaiwer. Where is probably Ur. That's more or less the same. So we don't have a specific location, but it says that it's an East African kingdom. So in all those quotes about Punt, nowhere does it say Arabia. Just for the record. Oh, RP, it's been a while. It's been a while. How you doing, sister? It's been a long time. Yeah, I don't know if you heard wifey, but she was greeting you. In a long time, RP. And of course, Wife is asking if you're doing well, RP, and she says, happy Mother's Day to you. And of course, Asiatic Black Man is here in the place to be. So, whoever wants to join, I'll share the link already. Feel free to call in. Or else let me know what's up, what's on your mind, brothers and sisters. Now, I know earlier I said it, I will be about 20 minutes. That turned into a good hour. Hey, with wifey, baby girl, eating, talking, chilling. Now, during the last live stream, there was a link. Sat 12. Well, Sat 12 is not there anyway. So, um, but I remember reading. It says go to the bottom to read the glyphs or something like that. Um, well, he has deleted two messages. Okay. It says Anu debunked, and he told me to scroll down. Oh, the link is not proper. He told me to scroll down for the glyph. Um, I think it's because the link is too long. Let me try this way. Oh, it's a shame. No. ancientneareast.org. Search. Debunked. We'll find it in the search. Oh, Asiatic Black Man is there. You all right, bro?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Just one moment, please. Now we have someone new here. Benson Belvedere. He wrote new to this information. How do we explore deeper? Loving it, learning of self. Well, deeper uh, facts, primary source, primary sources as possible, and whatever culture you're looking at. If you know the language, then it helps. But if you have any specific questions, then feel free. And if you want to join as well, then you have the link there. RP wrote, "Good greetings to you and family. I've been working a lot. Happy belated Mother's Day, mommy." She ouais. And we also have King Shadi Radi, Habari Yako, Habari Gani Nugu. So, yes, brother Asiatic Black Man, feel free.
Yeah, peace, brother Shaka.
Peace.
Yeah, I'm on the article for the land of Punt on Wiki, and they have the quotes from E.A. Wallace Budge and Flanders Petrie. You mind if I read from what they said?
Well, I will. So the article on Wiki is Land of Put, is it?
Yes, sir. I'm on the
Okay, so
where it says Tanetta,
let me just share it.
land of God.
Let me just share it so you can see it at the same time. Uh, and are you going to read a specific part of the article?
Yeah, right down where it says Tanetta for land of God.
Okay, so yes. Okay, so yes, go
Okay,
ahead. So everybody can
I'm
see it at
about
the same time.
halfway down the article where it says God's land in quotations. It says
Just there, God's land.
God's
Yes.
land when interpreted as holy land or land of the gods slash ancestors meant that the ancient Egyptians viewed the land of Punt as their ancestral homeland. W. M. Flanders Petrie believed that the dynastic race came from or through Punt, and that Pan or Punt was a district at the south end of the Red Sea, which probably embraced the African and Arabian shores. Moreover, E.A. Wallace Budge stated that, quote, Egyptian tradition of the dynastic period held that the aboriginal home of the Egyptians was Punt. However, the term Tarneta was not only applied to Punt located southeast of Egypt, but also to regions of Asia east and northeast of Egypt, such as Lebanon, which was the source of wood for temples. So these both of them are referencing to the east in Arabia as well as on the shores of Africa. So that's why I was saying, as we was discussing, that Punt was on both sides of the Red Sea, according to E.A. Wallace Budge, Flanders Petrie, and as well, they don't have Dimitri Meeks quote here, but Dimitri Meeks also says the same.
I see. But those two authors have passed away quite a while ago. And I've quoted from the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt. This is up to date. Um, this is I would, this is 2003. Uh, Petrie, hold on, Petrie. Well, I can go straight to the article. Um, Petrie died in 1942,
Yep.
and Budge died in 1934, almost 10 years prior.
Right.
So that's like 50-year old. And on top of that, it says Petrie believed that
Yeah.
the dynastic race came from or through Punt,
Yeah.
you know? So that's
E.A.
50-year
Wallace
old
Budge,
information there.
Dimitri Meeks as well
Yeah.
is
Yes,
another
50,
who believed the
that's not
same
up to
thing.
date. That's not up to date.
Dimitri Meeks is I don't even think Dimitri Meeks is passed on.
Okay, now, well, this I don't see here, but the only thing that is a shame is that I did not have the name of the different authors from the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt.
Hmm.
But I guess I will have to go to the book if somebody wants to know. Um, but the different quotes that I made about Punt being an East African country, being somewhere
It
around
is.
Somalia
So
and Eritrea,
it is. It's
different
on both
authors made
sides.
those statements,
Hmm.
but none of them ever mentioned Arabia.
I just gave you two.
50
I
years
just
ago,
gave. I just. I just
and and
gave.
and and
I
and,
just gave
and
you two though. That's all.
50 years ago,
We
and
know that when we study frankincense too, we will discover that the highest quality of frankincense in the ancient world was coming out of Arabia. And then
I've read that. Yeah,
when we add to that the fact that Hatshepsut, she went to get frankincense. That's what she went to get on her trip to Punt. And she is clear that she produced a Red Sea fleet in order to do so. So she had to get out on the water in order to get this frankincense and this myrrh, which we know in the ancient world the most potent form of frankincense and myrrh, it's a well-known fact, was coming out of Arabia. That was
you're making,
prized.
but you're making a conclusion. There's no record anywhere of Hatshepsut going to Arabia.
Who if we study, see, that's why the flora and the fauna on the stela is so important, because when we study the flora and the fauna on the stela, where they have where they're carrying the frankincense trees and all of that, they clear you well, the science, not myself, but the scientists have concluded that that frankincense was the frankincense that was coming from Arabia. That's just a fact, hands down, in the ancient world that
I'm sorry. Did
frankincense
you
was.
say? Oh, okay. I'm having some, my connection is not so great. Just at the end of your statement, it was breaking off. But I heard when you said the scientists figured out that that the frankincense was coming from Arabia, and then I couldn't hear you anymore.
Yeah, or the flora and the fauna that the
Hmm.
most that it is agreed upon. It is the consensus that the frankincense that is spoken of in the Bible and these different spiritual texts and whatnot. It was the highest grade of frankincense, the most sought after frankincense in the ancient world. That priceless frankincense was coming out of Arabia. That's where it
Hmm.
was coming from. Hence, that's where we
Yes.
see Hatshepsut. She goes back. She doesn't. She gets the whole tree. She brings back whole trees with her to plant them.
Nah.
In Kemet. It's on the Stella. It's on the Stella.
Well, I actually went there. I even took a picture, but
Hmm.
it's no longer really a tree. It's more like a root left. But you're still making that conclusion. Nowhere does it say that Hatshepsut went to Arabia. The fact that the frankincense or myrrh in Arabia was sought after, that's one thing. But to make the conclusion that because of that, that's where Hatshepsut went, that's not attested anywhere.
Well, like I was saying, you would have to examine what the scholars are saying about the Stella. I have already. I have examined what they say about the Stella. That the fish on the Stella are not freshwater fish; it's saltwater fish on the Stella.
Hmm.
According to the description of the text. They look at the fish and they examine the fish and determine that the fish were saltwater fish. So indeed, she did get out on the Red Sea. She had a Red Sea fleet. But the question is, you're correct. Where was she going? Did she just simply go down to the Horn, or did she in fact cross over?
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
question is within reason. It's a reasonable question.
Reason or interpretation. But
Either or, it's within reason. And especially when we
because
add,
reason that's subjective.
right, when reason, all reasoning is subjective, but that's what we need. That's how we start out.
Hmm.
We begin to reason and deduce and use logic. It's like a mathematical problem we're trying to solve for x. you know so it's a lot of unknown variables in our history. Some things we know and are apparent, other things are unknown, they are x's. So we're really discussing an x right now and trying to get to the bottom of it.
Hmm. Now, um, SAT 12 wants me to ask you a question, but SAT 12, why don't you join us? You probably have a microphone. And however, I wanted to ask you, SAT 12, there's that link that you shared in the previous live stream that we did earlier, and the link doesn't work. It's where you wrote Anu debunked, scroll down to glyphs. It's from ancientneareast.org. And could you share that link again? I would like to see. Uh, oh, okay. Is it myth of the Egyptian Anu people? Because I did search for Anu and I found one. So let me share it.
Yeah, the Anu are actually prominent in Kemet and Mesopotamia. That title, Anu, as well as Amu, with the M in the middle and the N. But the Anu, the N with the N, is prominent
Who?
in Kemet and Mesopotamia. And just for the record, I'm of African descent.
Well, Mesopotamia, Mesopotamia. That's Anunnaki, right? Not
No,
just Anu. Period.
I don't necessarily subscribe. to all of, because people get a little crazy and spaced out with the Anunnaki thing. In my opinion, no disrespect to anyone, but I don't really go for that full throttle with the Anunnaki because it gets a little crazy. But it is a relationship to the concept of the Anu. But I'm not one of those, Shaka, that's into the the all of the outer space part about the Anu stuff and all that. I'm not with that
Mm,
right there.
okay.
I stay within reason, beloved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, Let me just hold on. I know debunk scroll down to the glyph, so that's the one. But the
Actually,
article is long. Yes, go ahead.
actually, Ngozi kind of, that was such a good discussion between Ngozi and what's the other brother, Zion Lex. That was
Mm-hmm.
really, the people. I think the people really won on that because I know they pushed, people forward in their thinking by identifying and discussing certain things. But Ngozi, in my opinion, I respect the hell out of the brother. You know what I mean? But in my opinion, he kind of trapped himself off because he said when the brother asked him something, I believe it was dealing with the founders of Kemet, and they started talking about Narmer's palette, and Ngozi slipped up and said, "Yeah, they was there already. Those is the people that they got on Narmer's palette that Narmer is holding by the hair." So then brother Zion Lex turned around and he said, "Well, so you saying that these were the pre-dynastics then?" He basically had Ngozi trapped right there. I don't know if too many people caught it, but I did. He had him trapped right there because he admitted that Narmer came in and took over from someone, and he ID'd those individuals as Asiatics. And Ngozi was like, "Yeah, the Asiatics, they was already there. That's who he got, holding them by the head." And then uh excuse me, and then Zion Lex was like, "So you admitting that the Asiatics was already there?" He admitted it already though. And I don't think the crowd, people is going for the entertainment, and stuff like that. But I don't think the crowd really caught that. You know what I mean?
Well, there's one thing is that I think I remember about that part. What people need to know is that we might not necessarily know for sure exactly what went down during that time with Narmer and the Sematawi, the unification of the two lands, um, Upper and Lower Egypt. But I would need to find a quote for that. But
Yeah.
I know that I've read somewhere that Narmer fought foreign people or
Mm-hmm.
Asiatics
Yep.
in order to unite Upper and Lower Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think that's what um, Ngozi was referring to.
He
Now
was.
Zion Lex jumping on that. It sounds more like Zion Lex is trying to say, well, the Asiatics were there, but anybody can come and invade or try to conquer a place. It doesn't mean that they are indigenous to the place.
No, he. That's not how the discussion went. If you go back and look at it, you could see that he basically, the person that's not like me or you wasn't going to catch that. You know what I mean? A person that's really kind of like into this stuff, they're not going to catch that. But when you into this stuff, you know that he basically admitted himself that the Asiatics were already there. He admitted that. And when we look at the palette, we see they say they have the same afros as the Bija. They wore like the similar hairstyle to the Bija with the big puffy afro, or the kind of like bob cut with the hair parted down the middle coming down on the sides. And we saw that we can see in East Africa to today,
No.
when the British was fighting the Fuzzy Wuzzies. The Fuzzy Wuzzies had those big afros. Those are Bejas. Those are Amaras, and those different E types.
Okay, that's what you're saying, though. That's not what Ngozi said.
No, that's not what Ngozi said. But I'm
Okay.
going. I'm going to. I'm just going in on what he was saying. You know what I mean? Those are the Bejas.
I mean, yeah, that's what you're saying, but I mean, it will be a bit. I'm trying to use a word that's not gonna make me sound arrogant. Um,
Yeah, that's all right, brother. Go ahead.
no, for me to go back and look at the video again because I've listened to it, went back also,
Hmm.
and it was very brief, only 10 minutes each for 2 rounds, and then question and answers. Um, but really,
That shit.
all I could say, all I could say so far is that Asiatics being there, from what I understand, knowing that Nama apparently or allegedly fought Asiatics, that's not surprising. It's not a big deal.
No, it's not. It's just showing that the Asiatics were there ever since the inceptions, and they were black people. They
No,
were black
that's
people,
that's what you're saying. That's not what he said. See the
brother.
things that but
It was no it was no Europeans in Kemet at 3700. It was no
how do you know that?
Europeans there.
Well,
Oh,
but they don't have to be Europeans. The things that your perspective is that the Asiatics were black people. Mine differs. So,
well,
as far
even
as
with
I'm
these,
concerned, they might.
I know you don't know about the that's not your alley, but I'm the layman too when it comes, yeah, I'm the layman too when it comes to this DNA thing. But I'm the layman as well when it comes to this DNA thing. But I can read, and as well as yourself. And from what I'm gathering from reading about the DNA, the E's were absolutely, undeniably black people. They were Africans. So therefore, when we see this E group in the Eastern Desert, we see the E group spanning from one side of the Red Sea to the other. It's just it's a fact. From the South Arabia into the Horn, EM96. It's available. It's on the public record, and we know from the Natufians that these were black people. It's
Well,
within reasoning.
well, when it comes to the DNA. Oh, Anthony Harris is there. Feel free if you want to join us. The link is here. People were asking for you actually.
Yeah, come
So
on. Yeah, come on.
here's the link if you want to join us. But
How's you see?
I'm really not
He said I'm lying, and he didn't even come up here yet. He
because he
didn't
heard
hear
you,
nothing. He didn't hear nothing I
but
said. He said
you
I'm
you
lying.
you two brothers will have the opportunity to spar as you usually do. Because I know you two love to spar. What's
I
up,
showed
brother?
him already. Peace.
Hetep, hetep. Ashe, Ashe.
Peace.
Shalom,
Shalom.
Asiatic black man.
Salam.
How are you?
He said,
I'm
"Shalom."
I'm not gonna say nothing right now. I'm listening to him, but I do want to say this, and this is a problem that I think we of African descent are having. This Asiatic paradigm is quasi religious. It's quasi religious that we're trying to find our root in somewhere in Asia. I mean, if you're going with the earliest settlements there, then okay, I agree. Those were African. Those were African settlements that were over there. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna deny that. But who were they around the 15th, 7th, 8th, 9th centuries? They were no longer there. They were gone. The founding, the foundation had already migrated. Either they pushed up into Central Africa or they went up into Nubia, they went to West Africa. We went all over. You don't represent one we don't, excuse me, we as a people don't represent one landmass. We predate all that stuff. So we keep looking at into these Semitic religions trying to find ourselves. We could just study that entire continent ourselves and say, hey, look, we trace right back to all of this. You see what I'm saying? The Muhammad's and the Jesuses and the Abrahams, throw all that out. Those religions have nothing to do with you. If you're one of people that, how do we go from worshiping Ra, Amun Ra? How did we go from worshiping and studying nature to where we're at today? Conversion, war, conquering. That's how we got here to studying these other things. Semites didn't like Africans. They were tired of looking at us and saying we were number one in the world. Egypt was the gateway into Africa, and they kept conquering and pushing up through there. This is why Ramses and Tutmos and Amos and Sekenere and all of them were so important in the history of Kemet or Africa. I like to say Africa. I don't separate the two. They went into that land and said, don't come up in here no more. See, the problem has always been somewhat tribalism. It's always been tribalism. Egypt banging with Nubia, banging on Nubia, Nubia banging on Egypt. No, none of us getting along. Now throw all that Semite stuff away, man. We got to get rid of that. If you want to study history, hey, man, let's go to the west coast of Africa and trace our last 500 years. Let's go there.
I'm not like that, brother Anthony Harris. I'm more into it like from this point of view. Our history has been taken from us, right? Now, being that our history has been taken from us, we know about some factors of our history. It's apparent. You know, we have a good grasp on what it is, on what happened, who it was. Other factors are vague. They are X's in the equation. So when I look at that area of the world, Arabia or East Africa, or even West Africa, South Africa, whatever it may be, there are many X's in the equations. So I'm just trying to solve for X right now. And I'm not going to discard, I know African people were there. I can't discard the facts because it's monuments there to support that these people were there.
Well, that's not my argument. That's not my argument. Okay, because the conquerors came in there and they inherited those buildings, those landmarkers. So I'm not saying that we were never there. But when you look at certain cultures and we read these Semite books and we try and say this is us, it's a lie. Because we're African, why would we divide ourselves up from the Africans in that book and hate on the very same practices in which these books derive from? Let me break that down to you again. There's nothing in the Bible ritualistically that wasn't already being practiced in Africa. There's nothing in the Quran ritualistically that was not being practiced in Africa. We gave the world religion, mathematics, writing, and paper. We gave the world God. So when we start looking into Western Asia, where your enemy pushed in from to push us out, when we keep looking there as the beginning of our history, it's a lie. This is why no matter the more and more they dig over there in Palestine, they find stuff that's African.
That's right. Because it is. Initially,
but those Israelites,
originally, it's African originally.
But those Israelites were not Africans. There was never a such thing called an Israelite. It never existed.
The people are older than the names. You know, we know that the people are older than the names. So when I'm looking at, like with Canaan, for instance, I know that I'm just looking at geography. I know I'm looking at, if anything, eponymous ancestors. So eponymous ancestors point me, from my opinion, to geography or a group, and not necessarily just one individual. And there's evidence that Africans were, in fact, there. That's all I'm saying.
What's up, Shaka?
Well, I'm here. I'm listening now. What I was about to say is I'm not familiar with the DNA at all. But what is your take about the last thing we were talking about with Brother Asiatic Black Man? Apparently, during the debate with Zion Lex, there was a time where Zion Lex was saying to Ngozi, well, you're admitting that the Asiatics were there. So I was trying to say that I don't have a quote there on the top of my head, but I know that I read somewhere that Naama fought the Asiatics. So I was telling Asiatic black men that, from my understanding, if Ngozi mentioned Asiatics being there, then that's what it would have been most likely. Nama fighting off the Asiatics
That is
for the
correct. That's
Sematawi.
correct.
Yes.
Because when you look at the palette itself, and I had noticed that when I began to study that palette, it's the same. Those same people always were trying to push into Africa. And these same people also begin to create the narrative saying God gave it to us.
Hmm.
So
How
we
can
admit,
God give you
so
something?
so we admit that Asiatics were present in Egypt even at its inception, even if it was
No, we
war.
admit no.
That's who's
We
on the palette.
no. What we're see, that's very tricky. What you're doing when you're
I'm not
saying that
trying to
they
trick
were
it. I'm
there.
talking
No, no.
straight.
Listen, what I'm saying. When you say that they were there, as if it was already their land or they were sharing it with them. No, I'm not going with that narrative. Now, as them trying to push up into Africa and take it over, yes, they had always been trying to do it, as stated by the late great John Henry Clark, peace be upon him, and thank you. He said our greatest foes came out of Asia, those Semites.
Right.
Those people thought they were better than
You,
you.
you know a Semite is different from an Asiatic, though.
Man, an Asiatic and a Semite is one and the same, man.
No,
Stop.
no,
They're
no,
one
it's
and the
not.
same.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is, man.
So what is so EM96? EM96. When we look at EM96, EM96 doesn't span from West Asia into the Horn of Africa.
Well, EM96. I'm not too familiar with all that DNA, and I don't really get into all of that. But once you start talking about all that, that's something totally different. I'm only talking about it from a historical narrative.
That's
All I keep on saying is, if you're gonna show me some Semites being of our bloodline, being of African bloodline, they're Asiatics. It's just that simple.
EM96 is African, and they are Asiatics. Those are the Asiatic speakers. By the way, I just wanted to let you know too. I showed the brother the glyph for Berber.
Did he show
I
you the
showed
glyph
I
for
showed I
show
showed
you
it.
the glyph for that?
Well, he sent an article. Emilia, what was her
White,
last name again,
Amelia
brother?
White, Amelia White
No,
woman.
I don't think it's white. I think it's something else. What was it, Asiatic black man?
Amelia Edwards, the land of Punt.
Yes, yes. And
Amelia Edwards, the land of
well,
Punt.
actually,
They
I
show
will
the
show you.
glyph,
So,
and I
well,
directed.
it's a hieroglyphic transcript. It's not the primary. Uh, but I will show you the article. So,
I produced it, brother.
Amelia
Okay, so
Edward.
what I'll do is,
Okay.
if you send that to me
I
at Chris
produced it.
Harris, 1 second.
Okay, hold on.
If you show, it's not a primary. Do you understand
No,
that?
it's not. It's not. And yeah, it's. I'm looking for the article right now,
And
but
I also
where
demonstrated
is
to
it?
the brother what a real troglodyte is too, beloved. Because you mentioned a
Base.
troglodyte. A troglodyte
Where is the article?
was
Land
on
of
both
Put.
sides of the Red Sea. That's where troglodyte
Uh,
comes from. Both sides of
Yeah,
the
but
Red
why do
Sea.
you always why do you keep looking into Asia
I
to try and prove something?
Because when you said troglodyte, I already knew what you was talking
okay,
about.
I think. Oh,
Because I
dang.
knew what a troglodyte
See, you're
was.
going back. No, you're
So
going
when
back to
you
that
said
argument again. Hold
troglodyte,
on, hold on, hold on. I'm not in front of my computer right now, but you tried to say that the people that you mentioned were those Berbers. You tried to say that.
I didn't
And
say
then
it.
when I showed you, it said
Amelia
writings
Edwards
of
said it.
antiquity said that
Amelia
possibly.
Edwards said that.
Okay, she's not, sir, she's not the authority.
I'm looking at sources, cross referencing.
No, that's a source and nothing more. It's not a primary source. Do you know the difference between a primary source and a source?
Yeah, brother, I know what the difference
What's a
between
primary source? Let me see if you
a
know.
primary source and
I'm gonna qualify you right now. What is a primary source, bro?
come on, brother,
I'm looking
stop
for the
that,
article.
man.
Okay, a
I got
primary
I
source
got 20
Um,
means
years. I got 20 years in these
that's fine.
books,
Let me tell
man.
you what a primary source
It's
is.
stone. It's stone. It's primary. It's something
No,
within
no, no, no.
stone.
That's
It's
not
something
what a primary
concrete.
source is.
It's
A
something
primary
concrete.
source. Okay, so you don't want to let me
Firsthand.
talk?
Firsthand. Because
Okay. Is
you come
Emilia,
off
is she the prime?
condescending
Did
and
she give a press,
pompous,
sir?
man.
Is she
Condescending and
a?
pompous.
I'm not being condescending. I'm qualifying you
Who are you to qualify me?
because
You
you're
can't
giving us
even.
sources.
I
Because you're giving
I
us
couldn't even.
sources and trying to cite them as the authority.
You was
And
talking about
I
some
need to know
stuff
what
the
makes
other
them the
day that
authority.
you knew absolutely nothing about, and now I done brought the brother the glyph, but you're
Hold on,
qualifying me.
hold on. You're trying to cite her as the authority. And I'm
You
qualifying you.
qualifying
Have you
me?
done? Have you? Are you just using this as a what we call
okay.
a
Now,
confirmation bias?
I'm not using it
now
as I'm using.
let me
I'm
just
cross referencing.
let, yeah, let me
I
just
have
say
shown
I was
Shaka
looking for the
multiple
article.
sources.
I was looking for the article, but I can't find it. But basically, it was just a hieroglyphic transcript, but there's no primary, so we don't know where it comes from. And at the top of my head, you had the B and the R, like the leg and the mouth, and then the B and the R again, the leg and the mouth. Then you had the loaf of bread X1, the one that you
And
use
we
for the T,
and we
and
went
underneath there was the it was a X. Let me tell you which one it was.
to
It
George Robbins
was
Glendon, and he said the same
X2.
thing.
It was
BRBR.
X2 bread, which is also standing for the sound T. So it probably served as a phonetic complement or determinative. And the last glyph was, the read, is it M17? The one that stands for the sound E, transliterated with the letter I. And I think on the actual picture itself, not from the primary, but the hieroglyphic transcript, I think, what was it? Berberta. That's what was written.
Yes.
So what I suggested to Brother Asiatic Black Man is to contact people from that WordPress article and Egyptologist university to ask them if they're aware of this glyph, because I never seen this glyph. I looked at the what's it called again?
Vigus.
Vigus dictionary, couldn't find it, so I'm not aware of that glyph. So we have to establish if that glyph actually exists, and if it does exist, what does it mean?
Right, but clearly I demonstrated that I did not fabricate it. I did not make it up. Clearly, I demonstrated
But
that.
we don't know if that
So we
source did. That's why he was
understood.
asking for. That's why he was asking for a primary, and that's why I was saying, well, what wall or what tomb or what papyrus did that glyph come off of? That was very important. What
True,
was the
but
time frame?
I demonstrated nonetheless that I did not fabricate it.
No, we're not saying that you did. We never did say that you fabricated that. We're sitting up there saying that is she's not the authority on that, and maybe you should get in contact with someone at the Chicago Institute of Oriental Studies, another Egyptologist that can verify that.
True. She's not the only one who said it, though. I gave the brother the other source, which is George Robbins Glendon, and we read from that source as well. And George Robbins Glendon said that it referred to either side of Kemet, both the Western Desert and the Eastern Desert,
Did he
which
say
not.
Berber?
But brother, the
Yeah,
things
he
that
said Berber. Yes,
but
BRBR.
that's fine. But once again, they're saying that, but we don't even know if this is actually a Meduneto word. That has to be established. That has to be established. That's why we should ask. I mean, that's not really my quest, and that's not my claim. But
Right,
you or anybody else is free to ask
right.
any Egyptologist
Yeah.
if it's a
Maybe the
Meduneto
restaurant's
word, and
well.
some Egyptologists will know about it.
Well, some do obviously. Amelia Edwards, George Robbins Glendon. Some people know about it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of other pertinent information too in that article that we
And
was
and
reading.
and and also, for the record, I don't know if you can hear me, brother Anthony.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there was another link that was shared, I think, by SAT 12, and it talked about Berber coming from pa, per, No, pa, ra, per. And then you have some Coptic, and it means the top of pyramid.
Oh boy, we're
So
getting into the
that's
Coptic now,
yes, and
huh?
so I just stressed for the record that this didn't have anything to do with Punt because this article by Emilia Edward that unfortunately I don't manage to find,
She's talking about
it
Punt,
says yes, but it
the
says in the article
Puntites.
that Berber exactly means Puntite.
Yep. And Nubian.
So that's nowhere to be found. It said that article. Middle letter is a language. If it's
George
not on
Roberts
that,
George Roberts
go ahead.
Glenn said the same thing though. He said that it referred to Nubians, Austro-Libyans, as well as Puntites.
Yes,
Well,
but
let's just be honest. The only reason why the gentleman continuously pushes this narrative is because he pushes the Asiatic black man paradigm. It's just a form of confirmation bias. My
Well,
ancestors come from hold on. My ancestors come from the west coast of Africa. I'm Yoruba. I know that for a fact.
do
I
you
know
know
that
the
for a
Yoruba have
fact.
a claim that many Yoruba have a claim that they came from Arabia?
No, they don't.
never heard that.
You don't know that?
No,
You
no,
don't know
they don't.
you
They
don't know
don't.
the
That is not.
Yoruba?
No, sir.
You don't know the
Don't
Ife?
start
You
with the
don't know
you
the
don't
Hausa?
know.
You don't know that they
Sir,
say
we're not
that?
talking about Hausa. We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that because now what you're
They
saying is you're
certainly
doing.
say it.
He's doing the Hebrew Israelite dance. You
You
don't
want
know. You
you
don't
want some
know.
help?
No, I
Then
don't need any help. I can
okay.
talk to my great aunt
I
who's still
I
alive
can
and
point
she'll
them
tell
out.
you they've
I
been
can
there forever.
point you to some sources on that.
No, thank you. You always trying to point to that
Oyo
desert and trying to
Oyo
say that's where we
Prince
come from.
Oyo Prince Adenome, he said it. The Dugawa say it. That's what they say, brother.
So
What
those
you
are
gonna do
all
with it?
converts.
You gonna go to all our people and tell them they lying?
You tell my aunt she lying. She say we've been on the west coast of Africa for thousands of years.
No, brother, but I'm just saying, some of our people we need to look into these things
We don't need to look into
because
nothing. Ain't nothing in
the
no desert. We
DNA,
wasn't dwelling in no desert.
Arabia
Everything
wasn't
we drew on
always
the wall had
Arabia
everything
wasn't
we drew on
always
the
a
wall.
desert. The
See you
Sahara
that see
wasn't
I
even
got him.
always a desert. The
Y'all see
Sahara
that?
wasn't even always a desert.
He only wants to point at the desert or that
No, we
area and
could
say
go
that's
to
where we're from. That's his entire
we
paradigm.
we could
That's why he cites these sources as a
brother.
form of confirmation bias. It's no way
we
around it, man. We
we
see what
we
you're doing.
we talked about the 22nd dynasty the other day. You didn't really know too much about the
Brother,
22nd dynasty.
sir, the Mekwesh dynasty in the 22nd, that was a
It's
Libyan
a Berber
dynasty.
dynasty. It's a
It's not a
Berber
Berber
dynasty.
dynasty. You're trying to
It's
push
a
that.
Berber
No, it was
dynasty.
not. They called
That's what
themselves Mekwesh.
Wikipedia say. It's a Berber dynasty.
So
but but
Wikipedia is
but
the
Yeah,
source.
but you
Wikipedia
see,
said it's a
you
Berber
see,
dynasty,
you see,
and when you
brother
study it,
Asiatic,
you find out it's true.
you see, brother Asiatic black man. There's one thing though. Uh, it needs to be clear that when Wikipedia, when it's a mention of Berber on Wikipedia,
It's
that's
an
Berber.
encyclopedia.
That's fine. But when it's mentioned in Wikipedia, it's not the Berber as claimed by Emilia Edwards, meaning
How do you
Puntite.
know, Shaka? How do you
Well,
know?
they would have said so if it was the case.
Why? What's your proof of that?
Because, well,
What's your
the
source?
consensus, the consensus, when it comes to Berber, is coming from that Greek term or Latin term.
That's not the consensus, obviously.
What it is,
It says
because
that they're Berbers,
who?
the 22nd dynasty.
No, who said that they are Berbers?
It's public information
Okay,
that
but I, ju-
the Labu kings were Berbers.
okay, but the people, we should not confuse the people. There is this hypothesis from Emilia Edwards and other people that you have the glyph Berber, and actually you said Berber, but it says Berberta. And even when we read, there's the sound E at the end. So it might be Berberta, Berberta E or Berberti, but never mind.
Either way,
There's
I
this
got it.
hypothesis. Sorry?
I said either way, I got it. I showed it to you.
You,
You wanted to
you,
see it?
you,
There it
you
go.
show.
He's trying
Okay,
to prove Semitic ancestry. That's it.
that's
Brother, he
fine.
didn't
He
even
he
know
has the
about
right
the
to.
22nd
Yeah, he has a right to.
dynasty.
He can do that.
But I'm just trying to let him know and the audience know that this is a hypothesis. This is a word that is not even established. This is a word that so far I don't find in a metadata book. I didn't find in a dictionary. I never heard of it. So if that word exists, then somebody will demonstrate to us that it exists and will tell us what it means. Because there's a other article, that's why I mentioned it, and it wasn't my finding, was SAT 12. It talks
Hmm.
about meaning the top of pyramid, nothing to do with Punt, people from Punt. So many people have hypotheses, but I'm pretty sure worldwide, if you ask people what Berber means, then they would say the same thing. It's designating people in North Africa, primarily. Nothing to do with people from Punt.
Yeah, people are wrong all the time, you know.
That's fine. But when we're talking about a language, there's dictionaries. So we know the meaning and definition of words. This word there is not even established. We don't even, at this point, we don't even know if that word exists.
Right. You know that article has a lot of corroborating information. DNA,
This is a
geography.
claim. This is
It
a
has a
claim.
lot
So
of
obviously,
corroborating information.
well, all you see, but the things that you see, this is how a lot of us go. Instead of looking for things that are established, we rather give more credit to some articles from people that we don't even necessarily know.
Confirmation bias.
Yes, and exactly to confirm their viewpoint, to confirm their belief. Basically, they came across something that suits them, and they roll with it. Basically, just to give you a very simple example, an analogy. Let's say I wake up tomorrow and I believe in extraterrestrial beings. If I go online and look for an article, I'll find plenty of articles that would talk about experiences. There will even be video footage and pictures and so on. And it's as
Oh
if I
yeah.
say, "Oh, but it's been proven. Look, there's this article that talks about it." That's
Hmm.
not the way to go. That's why I mentioned consensus, attestation, and there we have a very simple issue: the issue of a word, a language. If I tell you about a word in Arabic or French or Haitian Creole, you ask the people who speak that language, they'll tell you, yes, I know that word, it means that. But this word there, it's not even attested.
So what do we make of the flora and fauna on Hatshepsut's stela then? If she has date palms on her stela, she has myrrh trees on her stela, and we know that the most prized uh, grade of those two plants in the ancient world was in Arabia, and
You see, once again,
she had a Red Sea fleet.
once again, I'm going to repeat myself because you're repeating yourself. So I'm just answering to you. I'm just answering you. But the fact that the frankincense and the myrrh in Arabia was sought after back then, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily where Hatshepsut went. The fauna and the flora, actually, I've never read anything from any scholar that says the fauna and the flora in the Hatshepsut temple depicts Arabia. Never. You're making that conclusion.
I'm not making that conclusion, Shaka brother. I told you I got 20 years in these books, man. I'm not, just coming out of the side of my neck with this
Well,
stuff.
gum, balm, myrrh, all of that stuff, that don't come around to the 7th century BCE. And that fits
Who,
the Arabian slave trade that was going on over there.
brother? We've been
So for
dealing
the
with.
fact that you're trying to say that Hatshepsut was speaking about myrrh and all the flora tree and all of that stuff to support some type of Asiatic influence, I
It's
gotta
on her
call you on
stela.
that.
It's on her stela. What you gonna do
Okay,
with it? She
what
put it on
Stella?
there, not me.
I'm
I
on my
didn't
way
put it
back
on
home.
there.
I'm gonna get it.
I didn't put it on there. She put it on there.
Okay.
She put date palms and myrrh and all of that stuff on her stela.
Did she
She
write that?
she wanted to make a statement, not me.
Once again, trying to support
It's
some type of
okay.
Asiatic
Okay.
influence.
It says date palms It says two fruiting date palms, three myrrh trees,
Did she
and
call it that?
that's what this that's what they have deduced from the Stella,
Who is
brother.
they?
That's what they have. Wikipedia, brother. Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is not,
Yeah.
sir. You go to
It's a
Wikipedia for
on
everything.
online. That's I don't go to Wikipedia for
That's all
everything.
you've been citing.
I just pulled out two sources on you yesterday. The
Those
wonderful
aren't
Ethiopians of the
primaries.
ancient Kushite Empire, and then we went to uh, John D. Baldwin. We dealt with that. A book out of the Library of Congress. What the Congress folks are reading. So don't sit up here and act like
Anybody can go into the Library of
Wiki
Congress
is
and
the only.
read, man. I don't know why
That's
you keep
right.
saying what they're reading.
That's
Anybody can go in there. It's just called the
because
Library of Congress. It's one of the
exactly.
oldest libraries in America.
But
It's nothing special about
a
it.
book that was inducted into their library through an
It's
act.
so and so
That's
is
a
Cat in the
fact.
Hat. That don't
That's a
mean
fact.
nothing.
I like that's cute that you would say that once again. But the fact
You're
is
trying to say that as if that book is so special or something like that.
somebody warranted that it was worthy that those
Another
people in
false
Congress
claim,
should
man.
know about
It's
it.
just false
You
claim
know,
after false
That's how it.
claim.
Well, why did they put it in there?
Asiatic black man.
You want me to
I would,
read
li-
it to you in the beginning of the book?
I would like to ask you a question, Asiatic black man.
You want me to read it to you in the beginning of the book?
Well, can I
These
ask you a
people
question,
are serious. They're serious about studying us.
Asiatic black man? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Now, that book you mentioned in the library. What?
No, I purchased the book. I got the book right here.
That's fine. That's fine. So, the population that is talking about, who is he talking about?
The who?
This book that you mentioned, which group of people is he talking about?
It's talking about the Kushites. It's talking about Kushadwapa. It's talking about the ancient occupiers or the
Okay.
ancient empire that came out of Arabia. Kushadwapa,
Okay.
one in the
Okay.
Horn and one in Arabia.
Okay. Does it say that the Arabs were black? Does that book
Yes,
say that?
it says that the Kushites were black.
Well, I'm happy with that. Cash,
Yeah.
that's Sudan. In the glyph we have
No,
cash, that's
it
Sudan.
say Arabia, Kushite, Kusha Arabia, Kush was black. That was the center of power. Black Kush, Black Arabia.
Okay,
The Kush that is in the Horn is secondary. The real Kush
okay,
was Arabia. That's what the book is saying. I can read from it, brother. You know.
okay. Read the quote, please, where it says that the Arabs are black or anything remote to that.
All right, hold on.
And can you tell me the book title again, please?
The title of the book is Prehistoric Nations or Inquiries Concerning Some of the Great Peoples and
Oh, hold on, hold
Civilizations.
on. That's too fast for me. So, prehistoric nations.
or Prehistoric
Yeah.
Nations or Inquiries Concerning Some of the Great Peoples and Civilizations
Yeah, I went PDF that book.
of
I went and
antiquity
pulled it offline.
and their probable relation to a still older civilization, of Ethiopians or Kushite Arabia.
Okay, John D. Baldwin.
Just be African.
C'est
Yeah.
comment?
I don't get it.
Well,
Yeah, I'm still here. If they're, I'll ask again. If they're
Okay.
Asiatic, if they're Kushites, why do you keep? Why do they have to be Asiatic? They're African.
well,
They from the mother.
apparently he's saying that the Kushites are Asiatics.
One more time. If they're Kushite people,
Okay. I'm
why are
so
they
I'm so
Asiatic?
Well, this is what he says, page 158 on of
But this is
prehistoric
you.
nations.
You don't get what we're saying here. You're using it's confirmation bias, bro. I just asked you if a Kushite is an African, why you keep labeling them Asiatic? You said, well, that's what he said.
Well, here's what he say though. He say in presence of
A
manifold
white man,
traces,
right?
in presence of manifold traces of their influence and of the uniform testimony of tradition, it cannot be denied with any sure reason that the Arabian Cushites, called Phoenicians, were the first civilizers not only of Western Asia, but the Thrace and the Thessal and the Epirus and the Grecians Peninsula, in the Mediterranean islands, throughout southern Europe, and in northern Africa. In all these regions, the Phoenicians are apparent in the oldest architectural remains, the earliest culture, and modes of writing and methods of political organization. These civilizers, this third race, now so distinctly reported by scientific investigators but not yet well explained, must have been very different from a swarm of nomads or a flood of disunited tribes moving from region to region without a fixed country of their own. Those wonderful builders, those traces reveal so plainly the habit of fixed life and spirit of developed nationality were not a horde of homeless wanderers. They had a country of their own from which their enterprise and culture went forth to other lands, and this country must have been Arabia. It is apparent that no other race did so much to develop and spread civilization, that no other people had such an extent and successful system of colonization, that they seem to have monopolized the agencies and activities of commerce by sea and land, and that they were the lordly and ruling race of their time. The Arabians were the great maritime people of the world in ages beyond the reach of
Maritime people.
tradition. As Phoenicians and southern Arabians, they controlled the seas in later times, and they were still the chief navigators and traders on the Indian Ocean when Vasquez da Gama went to India around the Cape of Good Hope. That's what he has to say about these black Kushite Arabs. That's just a, if the book got like, let me see, it's about 370
I got
pages.
Team Osiris. Excuse me,
You
Asiatic black man. I got Team Osiris getting ready to come on. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
okay? And I gotta ask Shaka first. Is it okay, Shaka? Uh-oh, I think he might drop.
um
Hello? Went out?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
okay.
We can't hear you, Shaka.
Oh, I'm unlucky because every time Anthony talks, okay. Oh, you can't hear me.
Oh, no,
Let me try. How about now? Can you hear me now?
no, we can hear you.
Yeah,
And
you,
now,
you in
so,
and
so,
out,
so
Shaka.
oh, you can now, or you can. Oh, in and out. Oh, I'm unlucky. Um,
And Anthony Harris, I respect y'all
I
brothers.
don't know how
Let's
to.
let me make that clear. You know what I mean? I definitely have tremendous respect for Team Osiris. Y'all brothers do some good work. I just disagree with certain points of the historicity, but I definitely respect what y'all brothers is doing. because in any case, it's getting us away from what Europeans taught us, so it's a plus, as long as we get the hell away from them.
Okay. Okay. Sir Flinders Petrie, his work is top notch, and he's white. Knowledge
Can,
does not
can, can,
have
can,
or
you- can you hear
carry
me
skin
now?
color. Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. We got you, Shaka, loud and clear.
Can you hear me now?
Gerald
Oh,
Massey took,
okay. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. Gerald Massey took 32 years to write his book, Egypt.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
There was never once tried to school the Egyptians before.
You breaking up too now.
Christianity is derived.
Like, that's one of the first books I read.
It's not a book that I can really read and just
No, you
blow
can't.
through it. It's more that book take
Yes,
years to understand.
it's a lot of information.
Then go read his works, Anacalypsis.
Mm-hmm.
Go read Sir Flinders Petrie's
Mm-hmm.
works. Go read all of those works. Those works are top notch.
I got his lectures right here. It's small. It's the small one though, the Gerald Massey lectures. But I mess with Gerald Massey. I had Anacalypsis. I loaned it to somebody. Both volumes of that.
Volumes 1 and 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wish they would have made the words bigger.
Oh man, running up here to my laptop right now.
Yeah, I just think it's worthwhile considering, brothers. That's all. It's worthwhile considering as a piece of this puzzle that our history is now.
Okay. Shaka, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Because earlier was breaking up when you were talking, and I don't think you could hear me. But hopefully now you can hear me.
So brother Anthony Harris, let me ask you a question. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you think of the pyramid texts, the Bible, the Quran, and the epics of Gilgamesh, as well as some other literary writings? What do you think of them all coming out of the Afro-Asiatic language family?
First of all, the pyramid texts do not come out of no Afro-Asiatic language family. Okay? That's something that what's his name made. See what you're doing. I don't know how many times I can keep telling you this. Afro-Asiatic language family are language groupings. They're just language groupings, okay? So up out of Africa. Writing started in Africa. It's just that simple. It don't start with no Semites because y'all don't got no original writings.
That's not
the Epic of Gilgamesh. No. It is. I'm answering the question, and I'm answering it accordingly. All right. We know that Egyptians weren't no damn Asiatics. They were African. It was a Nubian culture.
That's not what the DNA
So
said.
when those historians, those European historians, and all those writers, they begin to call it Afro-Asiatic, it was just a slick way to take it up out of Africa. Same thing we get with sub-Sahara or sub-Sahara Africa. You gotta stop that. It's just African writings.
I would be able to agree with you, if it wasn't so interesting that all of these texts come out of. See, you really can't say that Egyptian. What language family does the Egyptian language belong to then?
It's
Since you say
African. It's
it's Afro,
African.
it's
It's just
classified
not Afro.
Afro.
It's okay, but who
You gotta
classified it
confess.
that?
You gotta confess. It's classified Afro-Asiatic.
Okay, so
That's
it's who
that's what
classified it
that's that,
Afro-Asiatic?
that's the truth.
No, it's not the
It's
truth.
classic. It
Who
is
classified it
classified. It is
Afro-Asiatic?
classified Afro-Asiatic.
Who classified it Afro-Asiatic?
You already know this, and I know you
So
wise
is
enough to
okay.
know
So is
that.
Egypt in Asia or is it in Africa?
I know you're wise enough
I'm
to
asking
know
you a
that the
question. I'm
Egyptian
asking you a
language
simple question so you can answer this. Is Egypt in Asia or is it in Africa?
is the Egyptian language classified
One more. See how he don't want
Afro-Asiatic.
to answer that. I got him. He don't want to answer that.
You don't want to answer that because it is
No, it's not.
classified
Yes, it is
Afro-Asiatic.
classified it by the white European.
Exactly. Yes, it is.
So is it
Yes, it is.
Asiatic?
He made a good, accurate assessment.
No, he didn't. Is Egypt in Asia or is it in Africa?
Egypt is in Africa.
Okay, so how is it Asiatic?
The language is Afro-Asiatic
Wait a minute, wait a
because
minute.
that's
First of all, Afro-Asiatic, who created that term?
the people who founded it
No,
spoke
no, no,
that
no, no, no.
language.
Who
Spoke that
created the term
language.
Afro-Asiatic? You just said it the other day. Who created that term?
Joseph Greenberg.
And Joseph Greenberg is a Jew, right?
He was correct.
Okay, so, and he created the term Afro-Asiatic, right?
Yep.
Okay, then. Is Egypt in Africa or in Asia?
I know the Egyptians spoke the Afro-Asiatic language.
See there, confirmation bias. That's
I
all
know
y'all
they
gotta
spoke
do. That's it.
That ain't all
It's
you gotta
confirmation
do.
bias. It's the
I know
confirmation
that
bias, man.
I know that they spoke the Afro-Asiatic language, and if
It's
we're
not an
going to,
Afro-Asiatic language.
if so, you're
How is
changing
it
the language.
Asiatic?
What language are you changing it to, brother Anthony
Sir,
Harris?
one more
Do
time.
tell us
It's not an
what
Asiatic language. It's an
what
African
what
language.
what language are you changing it to?
Brothers, hold on, please, brothers. Brothers, please hold on for one moment. We have a new guest here. Welcome to the new guest. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Peace. How y'all doing? Peace to the panel. It's Brother
I don't know
Triz.
if the new guest can hear me. Oh,
Peace.
oh, hey.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sorry, what was your name, brother?
I'm Brother Triz, Team Osiris.
Team Osiris in the building.
What's good? What we got going on here, fellas?
We got this gentleman on here. What I'm trying to explain to him is he seems to be on both sides of the fence. I'm trying to tell him that Africa had his Medu Neter, hieratic script. That's all, in fact, African-based writing. He's trying to label it Afro-Asiatic. How can it be
Don't say
Afro-Asiatic?
why you saying I'm trying to label it when you know Joseph Greenberg labeled that and it's
Okay,
been
but
that
you're
way.
trying to get
So stop trying to say that. Okay, well hold on though. Be clear.
You
Joseph
said that the
Greenberg came
African
up with
language is
that.
Afro-Asiatic.
Joseph Greenberg came up with that. All right, beloved.
Is Egypt in
Let's be
Africa
clear
or
on
is it
that.
in Asia?
Listen, brother, you got to argue with Joseph Greenberg.
Okay,
It's
so but you're ready to
it's
confirm. You're
classified.
using confirmation bias to suit your own agenda when it comes to their own language.
I'm using the consensus.
It's not a consensus.
The consensus is all these years it has been ever since he's classified.
So you're trying to say that the Egyptians, the Africans' language was influenced by Asia?
Afro-Asiatics, yes.
Wait a minute. Okay, give me the lingual breakdown then. Give me that breakdown. Who influenced the Medu Neter?
Who influenced the Medu Neter?
Yeah.
Oh, brother, now you want me to be I'm not
You
a
said it's
linguist,
Afro-Asiatic? You're not a linguist, right?
Joseph Greenberg classified it. That's who classified that.
Exactly.
Brother. So why are you coming at me?
1948, 1945?
Why you coming at me like I came up
So
with
Joseph Greenberg classified it in 1948, 1945. So before that, it was just that, an African-based language. That's all. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Maybe
I'm not a linguist either.
Maybe it was a Asiatic.
But what you're trying to do is try to find some way to assign.
Can you hear me,
African...
brothers?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry, brothers. I just want to say we have another guest that came in. Um, Grand Grand Archivist. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, Brother Trees, welcome. Thank you for coming in. I was wondering if you're the brother with the glasses because your voice sounds familiar. But
Oh, look,
feel free to add
no
on.
glasses.
Oh, okay, okay. I
All
can see
right,
you now.
yeah,
Okay.
nah, no glasses. But I mean, I see, the brothers going back and forth, right? About, and it looks like it's, relating to Africa versus West Asia, right, or Near East or whatever, Middle East. Um, the name of the language is the language families is called Afro-asiatic, but that doesn't mean that anything started in Asia and then came to Africa, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that it was started in Africa and then shared throughout Asia. That's pretty much what it's saying. When people were talking about Afro-Asiatic, the people that made that coined that term, it doesn't. I see people using it to say like, oh well, so that means that the Middle East went ahead and gave the language to Africa, right, to make it seem like something that is not. So I think that's what brother Chris is kind of defending right now, but he don't really have to defend that because that's not really what happened in history. That's not the case. Um, and I don't know if the other guy's making that point because he kind of was saying like that he wasn't trying to make that point per se.
No,
So
I'm not.
what is it exactly that is the argument? Because I just came in, but I know that name Afro-Asiatic it starts arguments automatically. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really see a problem as seeing it for what it is, which is, language families that branched off from within Africa out into the Arabian Peninsula, the Near East, so on and so forth.
Right, bro. I'm not with no Asian supremacy or nothing like that. I'm not with Islamic supremacy. I'm just with examining the historical record. And when we look at, if you are familiar with EM96, the haplogroup, we see EM96 span from the Horn of Africa into the area of Arabia. And we know about the back migration. And we know that these E's initially were purebred Africans. They were Africans, like, for instance, the Natufians and the Cushites. When we look at what they have available to us, these were E markers. And when we see that 60,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, 2,800 years ago, we see successive migrations of these E's back into the horn. And I'm just saying, it wasn't. I know initially that it wasn't no white people; it was black people. And I believe that we underestimate that area of the world as being relevant to our history. That's just my point. That's the point of view that I'm coming from with it. Not that that area is supreme or better than West Africa or South Africa or anywhere. You can't hear the brother.
My bad. I was on mute. My bad. So yeah, I agree. Some people might approach it that way that you're talking about. Um, to me, it's like
Hey, can y'all hear me?
yeah. Who that?
Hello?
Somebody came in and dropped out. But I mean, I hear what you're saying as far as genetic legacy coming from
I don't
Africa
know
and,
if
and spilling
somebody's
over
talking over here
into.
anymore.
Who that?
It looks like Brother Trees trying to talk.
Can you hear me?
I can hear everybody loud and clear. Keep going.
Okay, good. So, yes, genetically, right, people migrate out of Africa into Asia, and so we have to respect that legacy. We also have to sort of discipline ourselves in the areas of evolution, right? Because at a certain point, these markers become what we know as Asian or whatever, right? And they give rise to like these other groups, like Sentinelese Islanders, the Jawara groups and stuff like that, and the Ati people in the Philippines and stuff like that. These are like your basal groups that started out Asian, family population. But anyway, that's getting beside the point. I understand what you're saying about these dark people that we should respect, that were inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula, and then some people try to sort of slander them or something like that. And the same thing goes for respecting the haplogroups that stayed in Africa and all the other haplogroups that were in Africa, being the most diverse, continent. But I don't really. I try to be above all of that shit for real, like, social group wise or not or whatever. I just try to look at it from an objective, lens. So I know that you guys are familiar with arguing people that have like a social attachment and maybe even a fanciful attachment, right, to groups that don't belong to them. Especially the later groups, right? These J markers and stuff like that, and these people that sort of come after the people that you're talking about. Those people and their legacy is sort of upheld and respected, right, by these social groups that identify with Asiatics or whatever, and over the groups that I know that you're talking about, which is these E-marker people that don't really have the documentation and the legend, right, that these Semitic groups develop later on. I'm trying to address that as best I can. I know I might be off or whatever here or there, but that's pretty much what I think about it. I don't look at it like it should be a big fight. None of these people are necessarily us per se, although we are related as being a human family that came up out of Africa. But socially speaking, we are none of those groups, so we don't need to take offense about nothing and try to make things, what they are not and shit like that. That's the stuff that I kind of don't like. So I like to respect all of Africa, starting in Africa, because that's where humanity originates and the most genetic diversity resides, even currently now. You respect that, and you respect the migrations, and you respect the different legacies that have been left, as after people have migrated and been subject to genetic mutation and cultural changes and stuff like that, to where they're no longer African, right? Is what we're getting at. So there's a way to respect those changes and those things, these subtle differences, without taking it personal and trying to put one over the other, and this one is better, and discovered this first, and so on and so forth. A lot of these discoveries we'll be talking about, they've been made by different populations on their own, you know what I'm saying, without having knowledge of these other populations, having discovered the same shit. So it's like, it becomes a pissing contest after a while. But I'm gonna stop now. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah, peace. I wanted to address something. I think there's a misunderstanding of where Afro-Asiatic is. All Afro-Asiatic is, in a nutshell, is you have languages are grouped by landmass. So you have a set landmass that is connected. It's Northeast Africa and Southwest Asia is what it was considered. Those two land masses are connected, and it's because they're connected, the different civilizations that reside in them both shared a common connection over time, whether it was trade, whether it was dominance of one particular culture over another, but they shared a lot of things. They shared culture, they shared language, and a lot of times the belief system. And so this is where Afro-Asiatic comes from, is because the only part that is considered Asiatic is the Semitic speaking languages. So you have like the Hebrew language and the Arabic language, but then you also have a back migration of Asiatics that came back into Ethiopia. And so you have like your yeah, and also the Ting Tigrinya,
Yep.
those languages. Also, there is another one.
Bija, Amara.
Yeah, but they didn't back migrate through Ethiopia. It's a Tingray and it's a Garaje language. It's a couple of other different languages that
Amadic languages, etc.
Yeah, Amadic languages. So they came from the Saudi Arabia area and traversed over to Ethiopia, the Horn of Africa, and that's what makes them Asiatics, because naturally their language is
These
not
are black
in
people,
Ethiopia
though,
to
right,
begin with.
Melvin?
It's not. Language doesn't
None
deal
of those
with
people were black people.
race.
The people that
Right. Language doesn't deal with
migrated were not black people.
language doesn't deal with race. So there's
The
no
pe-
way. But there's no way for us to say, hey, they were black or they were not black. Whether they were black or not, the point is that they back migrated and they share the language. Language doesn't necessarily cover a race or a ethnic group.
So we can't reason that they were black
No,
people that
we can't.
back migrated.
We
Black is
can't.
just our
Any-
modern is a modern word that we use. None of them would have referred to
It did
themselves
not.
as
Yeah,
that.
that
Exactly.
concept.
we know what we're talking about when we say
We
black.
do know what
you
we're
know,
talking about, but that
you know,
concept
come on
of
now.
race,
Right. So,
ethnic group,
well, if
ethnic group.
you want to simplify it like that, brother, I hear what you're saying. Then you have to look at it like a gradient, like how we do today, right now. Whereas to say
Right.
African Americans, we are not all 100% any one thing, right? So it would be a
Right.
gradient that applied to that area of the world,
Correct.
where you got East African, North African, you got a little bit of Central African component, you got a little bit of Arabian Peninsula component, whatever, kind of mixing.
So the EM96 that back migrated, we can't ascertain or deduce that those were black people back migrating. I'm talking about EM96 is 65,000 years ago. We pretty much know that there were no Euros around 65,000 years ago.
Well, here's the thing. EM96 took its time coming back. So, like, the same people that left are not the same people when they came back. They had mutations that they had adjusted and adapted to over
Right.
time while they were out. And so when they came back, they might have retained some of their older mutations, but they're not the same exact people as they were when they left.
See now, but we can clearly demonstrate that 10,000, 15,000 BC, the Natufians were E's, and they were definitely African. So
Correct,
why
but
would we?
this language grouping doesn't apply to the Natufians.
Right, but
Those are archaic humans.
why would we deduce that the people who came back even later were anything other than African?
But because of the long time that it took for them to come back, and the fact that they had mutations while they were out of Africa that persisted, and so when they came back into Ethiopia, they're not the same people that resided there. Like the Ethiopians at the time prior to the back migration didn't speak Amharic or Tigray. That was a language that was adopted that came in because of the back migration. So there's a difference in the type of people. So I wouldn't necessarily say they are or they're not black. I'm just saying linguistics. So language, the study of language, doesn't deal with ethnic group or skin color.
Mm-hmm.
They were humans. We know that.
Yeah.
But they could vary. You could have an Arabic person, an Arab person, come in to Ethiopia, which they did due to history, and they could speak, Arabic and Amharic or Tigray or any of the other Semitic languages.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a Hebrew person that could have been part of that back migration that speaks, their Hebrew language, or they could have spoken Amharic. What's the word?
Yeah, that's right. Amharic, geese.
Amharic.
Amharic, yes. Amharic, yes. So it could have been either of those situations. So that's why you don't want to just pinpoint it on skin color, because you easily run into the trap of having to prove the case there. The same with the Assyrian languages. Assyrian is falling into the Semitic region. It could have been someone from the Assyrian speakers. I'm not saying for definite that it was. It's just that because they're part of the Semitic family that is responsible for the back migration, that is why Afro-Asiatic is Afro-Asiatic.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. There's a reason why it's spilling over into two land masses, because that's the case.
Right.
In reality is what's happening.
And then anthropology and the culture studies show that not only have they similar languages, but they also have similar cultures, similar belief systems due to the time that they were in contact with each other. So not only did they borrow phrases and terms from each other like cow, or mother, or father, or farming, or whatever the terms were, not only did they share them, but they shared a way of life. Whether it was dominance, whether it was contact. But the point is, it's been proven due to language, culture, as well as history, that they've had close contact. An example would be how the French came to the Americas, and now in our language that we speak today, bits and pieces of it are French, and certain words we would not have in our language if it wasn't for the French coming to the Americas. And whether it was dominance, whether it was just influence because they came in and they were either allies or enemies, whatever. But because of that contact, we share language. But in the English example, that they're not the same language family. They're connected from a deeper root, but they're not the same. Whereas with Afro-Asiatic, they're all close, and they're not from a distance like French is with English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I think that Joseph Greenberg's designation of Afro-Asiatic is so effective, because it encompassed the language system encompassed both shores, both the Horn of Africa, which is Afro, and then the Arabian Peninsula, which is Asiatic. So his designation of Afro-Asiatic, in my opinion, is effective in that sense, because it takes into the geography that the language encompassed. And when
Right.
we look at the phylogenetic study by Royal Society B, even to date, and that's 2009, they're trying to pin down they use Akkadian as the basal, but then again they say that Afro-Asiatic developed in the Horn. So it seems like even the most up to
Right.
date study is kind of confused about it.
Well, they're confused about it because they want the debate now is whether they left Egypt and then back migrated through Egypt, or whether they left Egypt and back migrated through the Horn. Either way, the evidence states that they did back migrate at some point, and then
Right.
however they got here, they still ended up in the Horn. So it originally the research was that they back migrated through the Horn, which is the most logical, consistent answer at this point.
Right.
So yes, I want to state not only was the Horn part of Afro-Asiatic, we also have to give credit to Egypt and the Sudan region, but also the majority of North Africa also counts as Afro-Asiatic. And
Yep.
then, as far as Greenberg, Greenberg just came up with the classification based upon landmass, but it
Hmm.
was the work that was done to vet him that makes it work. It's the work that was done. And that's why people who critique Greenberg, they critique him because of his method of classifying the languages, but what they don't read is the research that was done after he made that claim, of
Right.
people who did the work and said, yeah, there's a connection there. You got Farm Group A, Farm Group B, or you may have Egyptians who ruled this territory for a period of time, and they shared the common connection and language and culture with those people. So the evidence is there now. It's just that some people may choose to disagree with it, but that is consensus.
Yeah, good points, man. All right, do we lose anybody or everybody there or what?
No, I'm still here. I was
Okay, okay,
listening.
Hey, I
okay.
got a question. I got a question. If anybody can help me with this, and just listen on in the conversation with brother Haru. Can y'all hear me?
Peace,
Yeah.
Haru. What's going on?
Good.
Yeah.
And I think, and
Peace.
I think, and Chris can correct me because I don't want to speak for Chris, but based on what Chris is saying, I understand what brother's saying is about as far as the language, how it covers two land masses as the African language goes into Africa. I mean, from Africa into Asia, although they are two different tectonic plates that's going in there. The language from Greenberg labeling Afro-Asiatic at such a late date, right? That to label the Medu Neter as an Afro-Asiatic language would by sharing instead of its parent language, which would be African, would be the issue. Because it didn't develop in conjoint with a Asian language. It developed from the south of Africa, and then even though they brought it into Asia and they shared certain cultures and tradition, you know what I'm saying, as far as the language and building, we know that as well with Greenberg's labeling the language Afro-Asiatic, we also know that during similar periods, they also took Egypt out of Africa, put it in the Middle East, and then said it's no longer African. So I think that is the contention of using Afro-Asiatic language for an African language, a fundamentally African language would be I guess you would, as the brother said, it would be the protection of it. You know what I'm saying? It would be holding on to our history and our right as a pure, like it's an African language, considered Afro-Asiatic, as if Asia somehow contributed to the Medu Neter.
Right, we're talking about what's being implied, and that's what y'all was going back and forth about, Chris. And let me just say real quick that we can squash that quickly by saying yes, Chris is correct, because it was developed in Africa, right? But the later stages of the language, as it kind of transitioned and cultures change and years go on, the later stages of Medu Neter would be included in Afro-Asiatic proper, right? Meaning that they're officially a part of the Afro-Asiatic family. Whereas the very beginnings of Medu Neter, that classification didn't exist obviously then, and that relationship wasn't as strong as it was in the later stages between these nearby communities. So really both sides are right. Yes, you are correct by saying that it's not the case that Asiatics gave this or shared the creation of it with these Africans in the beginning. No, that's not what happened, right? But what did happen is the people that are relative to those Africans that made that language created other languages that are in this Afro-Asiatic family. So the later stages, yes, qualify as officially Afro-Asiatic, whereas the beginning stages do not. But if any part of that particular language family shares relation with now these Asiatic family and languages, then it's officially now Afro-Asiatic. So we don't have to argue about, semantics and stuff. And I know that some people will try to use that to make the that Semitic is better or it helped create the language. So it's right for defending that no, it started out in Africa, and then as culture widened our radars, communities' radars, where they're now communicating with these far away lands relative to what they thought was far away back then. Now you got people sharing languages, creating new languages, becoming community together, trading, having official languages that they're going to use in particular locations for particular reasons, having children with each other, so on and so forth. So now it does become related. So the descendants of those first peoples now become related to what we call Afro-Asiatic. They share genes and share cultures, all the stuff that Mel was just talking about. This happens over a long period of time. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I would never sit back and assume or say that the Africans did not take technology from the Semites. We know that they did do that. You see what I'm saying? We know that
Correct.
they did take certain technologies from them and say, okay, we can adopt this and add this into our culture and use it to better our community. So I would never say nothing like that. That
Right.
would
It's
be
a
wrong.
two-way street. It's a two-way
Right.
street. We can't be out here biased, which, like I said, we in the conscious community, we know people is going to push their line, but we have to know when to stop and be like, hold on, come on. That's not even logical,
Right.
If you got
And
these groups that are close enough together, they're going to share some stuff, right?
that's right. And I want to say this, SAT 12 of Asiatic Black Man, he wants to know what happened to the Afro in your name. How come you don't call yourself Afro-asiatic Black Man? That's just a question in the audience.
Who is he directing that at?
He's directing it at Asiatic Black Man.
Because brother Sat 12, I'm from the ilk that Asiatic is black. That Asiatic is distinctly different from Asian, and Asiatic means black, just like the European Orientalist. The Orientalists, they study Black Arabia, and they study Black Levant, they study Black North Africa in Orientalism. That's what they study.
Okay.
Right.
So see, how I interpret that is to say he's not using the language in the same way. He's using more of a more recent African American etymology or folk system of language that we are known to use. Like if you've been around Nation of Gods and Earths and that kind of culture, you know that we use Asiatic, and yes, we do use it to mean black. But that's just a meaning that we created as African Americans. You know what I'm saying?
A
In this
colloquialism.
colloquialism, right? It's not a true Asiatic in the proper sense of the word. It's just more of a folklore term, not to disrespect my brother. You know what I'm saying? Because I come from that ilk too.
Understood,
You know
brother.
what I mean?
Yes, sir.
But this whole name stuff, you can call yourself what you want, and you can have that meaning if you want to. But it doesn't mean that he's trying to say he's not black or not African or that he's disrespecting. You know what I'm saying? African people.
Right. Something else I wanted to add, as far as the Afro-Asiatic, the language is a trade language as well. Ancient Egyptian was a trade language, specifically around the southwest uh, Asian, Southwest Asian area. So from the Levant region to the Saudi Arabia region, it was considered a trade language. So when you have a trade language, whether it's due to dominance or influence or contact, you're gonna have other cultures adapt their language to communicate with you. Whether they use it for trade, whether they use it as part of their normal language, as an adopted phrase, like we do with the French terms. So, being that it's a trade language, it's always going to be considered Afro-Asiatic because of that. And then you're going to see certain contexts from ancient Egyptian in Hebrew and in Arabic and vice versa. So again, this is because it's a trade language. It's like uh, English is considered a trade language. And what you have now are various dialects of English that over time, give it enough time, could change the position of where we held the English language. You have the American dialect. You may have the African American dialect. That's an actual thing. They've studied, the African American vernacular and determined that we have our own dialect, depending on our region, of how we use the American English. So, same way with that type of language, you would have people use their language with a different vernacular dialect. And because of that adaptation and adjustment in their language, that's why they become connected. No one would say English is a North American language by default. It's something that had been brought here and was adopted, but it existed prior to that. And it's the same way with the ancient Egyptian language. It existed prior to it being connected with the Southwest Asian languages, but once it got into the region, they merged. There was no conflict, there was no bumping of heads. They merged easily. And so that's something I want to make sure we clear that up.
Your three brothers.
Hello?
Yeah, so you
Yes,
guys
go
still
ahead.
there?
Okay,
I am.
yeah. I think somebody dropped off though.
Yeah, Anthony had a phone call, so he bounced, but he'll come back.
I just think Greensburg's classification is based on consonant root as well. From my own research, I can see we can clearly demonstrate, multitude of consonant roots that share the same symbol and the same conceptualization in between the Metuneta and Arabic and Hebrew and Aramaic, Akkadian as well. We see the consonant roots, and it expresses the same exact terminology or the same exact idea and conceptualization, as well as the consonant roots. So I think it's a little more than just geography to why Joseph Greenberg came up with that classification.
For the record, Asiatic Black Man, I've downloaded that book, Prehistoric Nation. On page 158, it says that when he mentioned the term Arabian Cushites, he's talking about Phoenicians.
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
sorry. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. And he says that they were called Phoenicians.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier, he says, I'm looking for the page. Uh, there it is. Page 134. It says they were Arabian Cushites, the Ethiopians of Greek antiquity.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that it's not specifically talking about Arabians.
Well, you would have to read the whole book. Like, I read the book already, so I seen a little more of it. But he classifies the sea people of the Egyptian tradition as the Phoenician one. The Arabian branch of the sea people would be the Phoenicians, and then in the south you would have the South Arabians, which are the boats of Magan. And so that makes good sense to me as far as how he put that right there in particular, that the Phoenicians were a branch of the Arabians that came from either the Red Sea or Bahrain Island. And the Phoenicians actually do have a tradition that they came from Tyre, but it's the other Tyre is in Bahrain, Arabia, and that's where the Phoenicians say that they actually hailed from, either the coast of the Red Sea or Bahrain, according to that text right there.
Something else I wanted to comment on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Something else I wanted to comment on. You were stating that the consonant roots also kind of help with Greenberg's claim. You want to be careful with just using consonant roots because you lose all type of context in a particular word. So, like when you say the word water, and you need context as well as, is it drinkable water? Is it water for washing? Is it water in a bowl? Is it rain or flood or river water? Like, there has to be context. You need your prefixes, your affixes, your suffixes. You need all of that to be able to keep the context. An example of using those roots improperly without context is how the Greeks use the Willoff term for black, for more. They use it for black, and that wasn't what the Willoff term meant. But because the Greeks only took the roots and they left off the prefixes, suffixes, affixes, they just ran with black, and that's complete loss of context. And really that's not what was meant to be said. So you got to be careful with that. You also want to make sure you have sound and vowel correspondences to make sure that they all match up as well. So it's more than just using consonant roots, because if it was just that, you could match several languages together with just the roots. You have to keep the context, because the context is what makes the language itself its own language, and that's how you make that connection. You specify, and then you find that specification in the other languages, and then you have a match.
Indeed. I wanted to know. I wanted to let it be known too, for the record. I showed the brother the glyph of Berber, or BRBRTU, which is the ancient terminology for Berber. And I was really pressing on the idea or the thought that we need to dismiss the idea that Berber originates with Hellenized or Romanized terminology, and is in fact is on the hieroglyph. So it could have not originated with the term barbarian. You know, that's something that the Greeks and the Romans put on our people like they normally do. You know what I mean? They always take good titles that we have for ourselves and make them derogatory, you know, over time. And that's what they did with the term Berber as well. And I
Right.
showed the brother the glyph, you know, you got to do more investigation on it, but it does in fact exist. You know, Amelia Edwards is the source, and we just looked at it earlier.
Just for the record, I hope I didn't cut anybody off. Uh, just for the record. Okay. There's this article where we have the hieroglyphic transcript, but we don't have any attestation that this glyph actually exists. I never heard of it. I haven't found it on my book or my dictionary. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, the source is
So
Amelia
far, it's a
Edwards,
claim,
though.
basically, a
She
hypothesis.
she's an
We don't know if
Egyptologist,
that glyph exists, and
and
if it does exist, we don't know what it means. So if anybody knows, if anybody has any source, then please share it with us.
and in support of that source, we also had George Robbins Glendon, who basically said the same, that BRBR was a terminology that referred to the west of Kemet and to the east of Kemet. That George Robbins Glendon, he said the same. He came to the same conclusion as Amelia Edwards, who was an Egyptologist. That George Robbins Glendon, as well, came to the same conclusion, that the terminology BRBR is far more ancient than anything to do with Greeks and Romans, and is also connected to the area of Marawi and the Berbers that were over in that area of Marawi.
Anybody else want to add something or ask a question? Feel free. Can you hear me?
Yo. I was taking a call. I had to leave. I'm back now.
Yes, I can hear you. I don't have any questions or comments at the moment.
Did anybody hear about the glyph Berber, BRBR from the hieroglyphic? Did anybody hear about the?
Yeah, I haven't. I haven't heard about that, so I couldn't necessarily speak on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, I just think it's something that changes the context of the way we should examine the history of Berber and its origins, because it runs a lot deeper than what we basically been led to believe. Even though that's an old book from the 1800s, I guess I don't know they swept it under the rug, or you know I don't know, but it's she's clearly demonstrating that in the article. Oh, I think Sat
But
put in the.
that's what I was trying to explain. This is someone making a
Oh,
claim.
I think Sat.
And taking this opportunity to ask, I came across this article sorry, claiming that the term Rasta from Rastafarism or Rastafarianism, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but the Rastafari religion, that movement from Jamaica, uh, there was a claim that it came from the hieroglyphic. And I was looking for it earlier. I couldn't find the article, but I wanted to make the analogy, and it was something about Rosetto. And people try to say this is Rasta, and they used a Birch translation, which is, of course, outdated. I was wondering if any of you ever came across that article.
No, I haven't seen that either. I mean, it sounds more like wishful thinking. I'm not certain on it though. I haven't seen any legitimate, source or claim for that matter on that.
Right, I haven't heard of that, but I do know like Rastafarianism started with the musicians, and they came up with that term.
Right. They made it one word. Okay, so we can
Right.
go into the word, right? So like in Ethiopia, you have Ras, RAS,
Yeah. Yes.
like the top or the head or the chief,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
The top of the line, right? The captain. And then Tafari, I forget what that was. I don't know if one of y'all remember it, but Tafari was another word. And then the
Mhm.
Rastafarians made that one word and then started, put that into their culture or whatever and made it. So it was like a Caribbean thing to be called Rastafari. That didn't really exist anywhere else except for there when they
Right.
came out.
I have to. Yeah, I have to pull up my source on that. But the early uh, Caribbean culture, that's what they used. There was a group. I have to get my source, but there was a group that started a music group, and they called themselves Rastafari, and that's where the original term came from. Let
Mm-hmm.
me see if I can find that.
Yeah, they got a lot of. It's a lot of monuments and different towns.
But just to make sure there's no confusion, it's not something that I believe it, but it was just to show that the linguistic acrobatics, the linguistic gymnastics that some people do sometime. Because from memory, I think the term from Birch translation was Rosto, like Rostau, maybe Rosto, something like that, or Roseto, and somebody pulled up Rasta, basically trying to make the connection between the two. So sometimes people use things like that that might sound alike just to
Right.
make them claims and put the
Yeah,
history way back.
Yeah, that's pseudo.
You have Ras, which is a
yeah.
word from Ethiopia. You have Tafari, and I think Tafari is one of the name of Haile Selassie. But I'm just saying this like, see, Asiatic black man is here, and There's one example during the last one, well, the one before last. He mentioned the movie Black Panther and
Hmm.
T'Challa, saying that you have Allah in T'Challa, and
Hmm.
this is what I consider linguistic acrobatics, because T'Challa, that name doesn't have anything to do with Allah. You might hear
Yeah,
that. That's just a part of the name that is
Right,
a homonym, but it
right.
has nothing to do whatsoever. The two don't have
yeah,
anything to do with each other.
Correct, correct,
yeah.
correct.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree to an extent. But it's the esoteric understanding, that I'm looking at. I know that T'Challa is a black cat. I understand the iconography, and I understand the iconography of the black cat in relationship to the black god Bess. And in the movie, they actually did utilize the iconography of the black cat and the black god with the Black Panther. And it's an old tradition. That tradition, the Bubas dynasty reinstated the cult of Basset, and this is a black cat that was deified to represent, the black woman. And I was just speaking in a way of the relationship of the two with the iconography as well as the linguistics, because the creators of Black Panther were not initially black people. The guys who wrote the comic book were Jews. You know what I mean? And I just reason and deduce that, I know that the Jews deal with Kabbalah. They know the black man is God. At the height of Kabbalism, just like the height of Freemasonry, they know that the black man is God. So, when I look at the iconography in the film, that's my take on it. That's my point of view. Hello?
Yes, we're still here.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just
Yes, can hear
the
you.
iconography. That's all, brother Shaka. I was just looking at the iconography, and I know that the two guys that wrote the initial comic book, they're the ones who put together those names. One of them was raised. I think both of them were from New York, but I know they both were Jews, and I know that Jews they study the Kabbalah heavily, and the Kabbalah is related to the Kaaba. It's about the black stone. It's about from where I'm taught, it's about black people. They know who black people are. You know what I mean? Even when we look at if we look at Dumbala, Dumbala is the creator sky god of Voodoo, which is made up of two words, Dum and Allah, the prefix and the suffix. Dum, which means a mound or a stupa, and Allah at the end, A or ALAH. It just all depends, on how a person want to cut it, how you gonna look at it. In my opinion.
So, does anybody know if Asylum Hotep has addressed the plagiarism that he's been accused of?
I think he did address it in a way, but not not in the sense of head on addressing it. More so stating that he had a reference list in the back of the book as well as a citation. But just because you have a citation, if you do copy word for word from another source, you do have to have quotes. Otherwise, the citation is saying, hey, these are my words, and then here's my source. Whereas in his case, the words were from the source. They weren't his words. And so he hasn't addressed it in that sense, but he kind of addressed it and kind of put it off as if he did the right thing. But not in the sense of properly addressing it.
I see. Because like I said before, it's quite of a shame and strange coming from someone who talks so much about methodology. Oh, Anthony is back.
Okay. Yeah, we all err, from time to time. We're human. I just think that you have to do the right things to try to limit as much of the errors that you have. I mean, you're not going to be able to stop everything, but at least show the attempt that you do know what you're doing and how you're supposed to do things. And I'm not sure if you saw our video, Team Osiris, but we did show instances where he did properly citate and he properly paraphrased in his own words. So it can be done, and it has shown to be done. It's not consistent. It's repetitive. It's a behavioral pattern, and I think that's the problem. Once you see a pattern of something, that means that someone is getting comfortable.
Yes, because the things that.
Sorry, go ahead. That means that someone is getting comfortable. You were gonna say something?
I think he is. I think there's something wrong with his mic.
I think his mic is maybe muted.
Oh yes, I was going to say, because you said indeed it's true that we're humans and we err sometimes, we make mistakes, but it doesn't appear like a mistake to me. It happens so many times. I don't see it as something possible for someone to. Well, I guess if you want to say that the mistake is the lack of citation or quotation,
Like you don't know what this means.
but besides that, I've heard him talking on the Dagger Squad channel, and he was talking with Garfield, Ngozi, and Ankh was there as well, and he appears to maintain that the Sumerians were black, and it seems like he's mainly using linguistics for that.
Correct.
And I'm not sure that we can really tie systematically a language with an ethnic group.
Correct. So, like how I explained Afro-asiatic earlier, language classifications are not classified by ethnic groups or race. They're classified by region. Certain people in this specific region speak this particular language, or they share languages. So that's the way it's been since the beginning of mankind learning language. So when you try to use linguistics or languages to try to organize or classify an ethnic group or race or color, you're mixing this linguistics field with the ethnicity, and it's not supposed to be mixed. It's supposed to be a separate entity, and that's the error that he makes when just using comparative linguistics alone. Because he's making these comparisons between language A and language B, he says, "Oh, okay, I have a match. So this must mean Sumerians are black," and that's not the case. Where's the anthropology to back you up? Where's the culture to back you up if the living culture is still persistent? If the living culture is not persistent, where's genetics? Where's some type of evidence to show that there is a actual connection? And there isn't enough evidence to show there's a connection. One, linguistically, it's a language isolate, meaning that it doesn't belong to a family of languages. It had never had a point of contact with any other language except Assyrian, and that's because they borrowed from their language. So that's out of the picture as far as linguistics, because there's no other language you could say, hey, let's see if they have a borrowing. Let's see if they have a match. They don't. Okay, so let's look at the culture. Okay, well, this culture didn't last long enough. This culture was a royal culture, but it didn't have longevity like Egypt or Rome or something, where you could see that culture develop over time. They didn't have a chance to. So that's out of the picture, because you're going to be limited based upon your anthropology, because now we don't know anything. And then lastly, you're going to use genetics. But there isn't enough genetics because there wasn't enough of those people to last. So what we have is very little information on these people called Sumerians. But what we do know is that we cannot classify them as black.
Correct.
Based on the evidence we do have.
We just if that was a debate and based on his methodology of determining who the Sumerians were, it was very poor methodology because
Definitely.
he didn't prove anything. He tried to sneak in the back way by using the language, but as stated before, people adopt different languages throughout migration, etc., so on and so on. Just because somebody speaks a certain way does not mean that they are African. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I speak English. You understand what I'm saying? But that doesn't make me English. That means I'm an English speaker.
Correct. Another example. Most continental Africans today speak seven or 6 or 7 languages.
They are trilingual over there. Right.
So because of that, you would think, okay, well, maybe because they speak Arabic that they are from Arabia. No, they're not. They just were African, but based upon their upbringing, possibly based upon their education system or their family, another language is inserted.
That's correct.
So yeah, you can't use linguistics alone. So linguistics is a very theological based scientific field. It's not established to the point where each and every match you make is a guaranteed conclusion. It's very hypothetical. So you have to have, like in science, repetition matters. So in linguistics, you have to have repetition, but it can't be so small that you say, hey, okay, I have 100 matches between this language and that language, and therefore they're connected. In linguistics, you have to have at least 1,000. Okay, here's 1,000 matches. Well, here's 500 matches. Oh, now you show influence. Now you say, okay, yeah, there's a problem here because I have 1,000 words that these two language groups share. Now we have something, because this isn't just luck that they happen to have these similar words. Now something happened in history. One dominated the other. They were allies. Maybe they were beside each other. Like, that's how linguistics work. And the fact that Assar tries to match Sumerian with an African language shows that he doesn't understand just the basics of linguistics. Or if he does, he just manipulates it in a way where he's able to fool people with this blackology or this Afrocentrism that isn't even existent within the field of linguistics itself. So
now y'all see why I brought Team Osiris in. They understand linguists. I'm not a linguist like that. I'm not a linguist. They do.
Listen, I'm not a linguist either. But when you understand the basics,
right,
you understand the rules of engagement, then you can break down each language and start from point A. Most English-speaking linguists start with the English language. It is the most understandable because that is your native language.
Native language.
So why would you start with the foreign language and not use your native language to understand linguistics?
Yeah, that's a good point right there too. That's a very good point.
Like
If
start
you
with
if you don't if you don't
your
know all
native
the
language. Yeah,
concepts,
start with your native language, and then you can branch out. When you
right?
can show the connection with your native language, then it's like okay. Like when I look at French and I see certain words in French and compare them to English, and I'm like, bam, okay, here's a word. Like this word didn't exist until a certain time period. Like now I have a match. See what I'm saying? Like that has to be done in order to prove Sumerian is linked to Africa, and it has yet to be done. So yeah,
And I
it's
would like to ask.
Mhm.
I would like to ask that book that he's quoting. I can't remember the title. Sumerians are black or something like that by
By
Is
a
that
Robert
Black
German.
Kramer.
Black
By
Soma?
Robert. Yeah. By
I
Oh
got
yes,
Robert. By
yes. Thank you.
Robert Kramer. Yeah.
I got the
Is
Black
that guy a
Soma.
linguist?
I got the Black Soma, the one by Hermo Hernstein.
Which book are you talking
Yeah.
about?
I have the
Oh, you had
Black,
are you talking about Black Summer?
yeah, the
Yes.
African Origins of Civilization, Hermo
Okay,
Hernstein.
okay. I want you to look up Herman Hermstein. I
Hmm.
mean, you can get the book, but just look up who the author is
Right.
and see exactly the type of work he does. Herman Hermstein is another blackologist. He does a lot of books on matching certain different ethnic groups with
Isn't
Africa.
he? Is he a white guy?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it's another
Oh,
guy that
I
does.
thought
What's that good?
I thought that. I'm sorry. I thought that Asar said that he was a black guy. At first, he thought he was a white guy, but it's actually a black guy from Germany or something like that. Or maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, yeah. He's white. It's
Oh,
another
it's not
guy
black.
that does that too. I'm gonna get his name.
Oh, okay.
Look at it right now. It's another guy that does exactly what Herman Hermstein did, and
Okay.
there's a lot of white authors that try to black everything because they see certain matches. But you can't do that in science. That's inaccurate. It's another guy
Hmm.
that does it. Give me a second. I'm gonna pull up his name and just go through my books here.
But that first guy, Black Sumer, the author of Black Sumer, is that guy a linguist?
Hermo Hernstein. I think he is.
Yes. Okay.
Hold on. Let
And
me.
mhm.
Okay,
And when I say
here he
linguist,
is.
of course, I mean somebody who has a degree in linguistics. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Let me check right now.
Because the whole book is just about language and phonetics and
Because I when I first saw the book, because there's a statue, I thought that it would be dealing mainly with artifacts, and of course, you cannot judge a book by its cover.
Correct.
But I'm usually, it's not really an opinion, but when people come with some outbreaking um, something like a very strong claim, I don't look at it too deeply firsthand because I'm like, okay, if they really come with something that people didn't really know about, then it will be known. They will come with some things that we didn't know, but I haven't heard much, and we have many scholars, uh, and I mean black scholars. I haven't really heard them talking about this book. So now that you're telling me, you brothers telling me that he's making his argument mainly on linguistics, I don't think they hold much weight because I'm sure you brothers are familiar with, for example, the standard of Ur, where we have depictions
Correct.
of the Sumerians,
Yep.
and
He
that alone, yes. Go
yep.
ahead.
Another the other guy I was looking for. His name is Gert Gert Mueller Muller. If you look up Gert Mueller, him and Hermann Heimstein have the same type of literary work. where if you look at Gert's stuff, it's like everything is connected to being black. He has Black Hebrews, Nubian origin Egyptians, like Black Rome. Like they do this type of work, but it's not something that is considered academic at any point. It's really just considered freelance work, basically.
Revisionist work.
Yeah,
Now,
revisionist.
now I will say I do have
But
the
I would like
ancient.
to ask brothers: is there anywhere where I can find a biography about Hermer Hermstein?
Mel, that might be
Anywhere
up
where
your
he
book right there. That might be
mentioned
up
that
your.
he has
I do have the ancient
a.
Black
I'm sorry. Come again,
Arabs
please.
and Hebrews by Gert Mueller and Anu Mbantu. They do have a lot of artifacts in here, like murals and carvings of Black Hebrews and Black Lagash and Black Assyrians with the nappy beards and the knotty hair.
How do
They
you know
do
those
have
are
a lot.
Hebrews?
Well, because the name of the book is the Ancient Black Hebrews and Arabs.
Exactly. It's not right.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying, brother.
As
But
as
they,
far as far as Hermstein, I have not found a biography on him. I've yet to find one. So yeah, if that's what you're looking for, unfortunately, I can't find one.
So because even on Amazon, usually when you click on the author, it says okay, he has a graduated from there or anything, something about the person, and usually when someone has a degree, it is mentioned. So
Correct.
I guess I'm not denying, I'm not making any statement, any definite statement, but nobody is aware of any mention of him having a degree in linguistics.
Right.
Because like another one that is highly influential to Osam Hotep is Mboli, Jean-Claude Mboli.
Yes.
Now, we all know that he's not a linguist. He's interested in linguistics. He has a right to make reconstructions or make any claims he wants. But for the record, he doesn't have any degree in linguistics because Osam Hotep, for years, he's been saying that he's a linguist. And I always found it strange for someone who doesn't have a degree in linguistics to call himself a linguist. I think it's fraudulent because if I don't have a degree in the medical field, I cannot call myself a doctor, a medical doctor. And I heard him once. He was talking with Jonathan Owens because Simon Hotep back then, and I've uploaded a video not long ago. It's called Asam Hotep self-proclaimed linguist who disqualifies Rekati Amen, Shekhan Tadia, Yofado Benga. He's saying that all the people are wrong. Yes, he's saying that they are all wrong.
Yeah, Jonathan was pissed at him for that because he was basically just taking a crap on the elders. Yeah.
And that phrase that Osar said, he said, because Jonathan Owens asked him, "Are you a linguist?" And he said, "Yes, I'm a linguist." And he asked him about his qualification, and he said, "I'm a linguist because I do linguistic." And I think that's one of the worst things I've ever heard. Because basically, if somebody has an injury, I'm going to put some alcohol or put a bandage on him, and I'm going to say I'm a doctor because I do medicine. It just doesn't make sense at all. And this is the same people talking about method, and I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible.
Right.
Because it might sound like I'm picking on him, but this is the same brother who said that Allah is in the Egyptian text.
Yep.
And he has not made any amendment yet. So, luckily for him, he has some platforms that he can go to, and he can just make his breakdowns and disqualifies people who actually earn PhDs. But him calling himself a linguist alone, that's fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. Or maybe fraudulent is harsh, but that's incorrect. That's invalid. That's not accurate. But then when we found out, like we have recently, as the brothers from Team Osiris has shown, and as also Nedaneb. I don't know Nedaneb, but I've heard what he had to say. There's some multiple instances of plagiarism. So the title that he claims is fraudulent. His writing full of plagiarism. That's fraudulent as well. But this is apparently one of the top scholars of the conscious community. Garfield said that Simhotep is his master teacher. And I find it strange. So it looks like the level of scholarship. I mean, Theophilus Benga is a heavyweight. He earned his PhD. He is a linguist. Sheikh Anta Diop earned his PhD. He was a scientist. Reketi Amen, she earned a PhD, unless I am mistaken. He's disqualifying all those people. He doesn't have a PhD. He doesn't even have a degree in the field that he claims.
Right.
And I think that's a lot. I think that's a lot.
I agree. He's even discredited Dr. Obadeli Kambon. He's a Ghanaian linguist. He's a doctorate in linguistics, and he's completely, disregarded him and said he doesn't know what he's doing because he hasn't done the work. And I'm like, the guy has a doctorate.
I did not even know that he made such statements. And you said he's Ghanaian. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in the first place, he was African American, and then he moved to Ghana, right?
Correct.
But that brother earned his PhD, and he speaks Twi apparently fluently. I don't speak Twi, but I've heard him. Now, how many languages does Imhotep speak?
Bullshit and full of shit.
There's one brother, actually, Netaneb submitted his paper to him. He was mentioned in one of the correspondence for the Ankh Journal, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I know him, and the last time I spoke to him, he told me that he was studying for a PhD in linguistics. He knows Theophilus Benga personally. He's greatly influenced by Theophilus Benga. So when I asked him about his study in linguistics, he told me the languages that he was learning. And he was learning like 3 languages. So I don't know about the whole world, but at least in France, if you want to be a linguist, you need to know several languages.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I speak English, obviously. I speak French. I speak Haitian Creole fluently. I speak 3 languages fluently. And I always wondered, how many languages does Imhotep speak fluently? Besides English, which is his mother tongue. So it's not a great achievement. It's not something like rocket science.
It is. Trust me, some people can't even speak the English language fluently. They haven't even mastered that.
Yeah, we're not gonna go there.
I'm telling you, don't laugh.
Maybe Imhotep needs a glass of sit your ass down.
Super size.
Oh yeah, super size, extra large. It's like
had he apologized for it, I'm pretty sure people would be ready to move on. But he doesn't even want to apologize for it.
Nope.
And actually, there's combo that I didn't know, but even Dr. Beatty, he earned his PhD, didn't he?
Yes, and
there was a debate about Kemet.
Yeah, he took a crap on him at that debate. But Dr. Beatty is a PhD, and he has linguistics. So yeah.
So does
because anyone, yes, go ahead.
Does anyone here that think that Garfield's book will be worth anything?
Oh no, we want to buy it.
Yeah, we want to buy it. I mean, I pre-ordered it, and I guess when that video came out, he canceled all the pre-orders. So.
I think he saw all of this and he took that book. He took that. He said, "I ain't putting this out there."
And it's like there's a Netaneb mentioned that Imhotep is not the only one who plagiarized. Wujau apparently plagiarized. Netaneb said many times in writing that Sanjeti plagiarized as well, but I haven't seen the actual parts. But that book about Kemet I don't mind people having hypotheses or claims, but the thing with and Asylum Hotel has been like that for a long time.
Yes,
He has something in his mind. He's presenting it as a fact, as an absolute fact.
correct.
And when people disagree with that, he's being condescending and basically explaining that we don't understand.
Correct.
And
You're very correct. Yep.
But then
yes,
he's unable to make us understand. He can't explain it. So does he not understand as well?
He's what he's doing because he's correct. What he's doing is he's freestyling and he's learning on the go. I've been a fan. I've been watching Asar for quite some time, and I have a lot of his paperworks. Like even before his first book came out, I have some of his documentations. And so what he's done, because at first he was a Hebrew, and then he shifted, and he's still shifting his approach. So every time he gets critiqued or corrected, he shifts his approach and says, "Okay, well, it's this time." So
It's been updated.
right. So he's basically freestyling and adjusting on the fly. So he won't admit that he doesn't know, and he won't admit that he doesn't necessarily have an answer for something. He'll just say, "Wait until my book comes out." But over time, he's just adjusting his information. So when the book comes out, he says, "Hey, this is fact," but then he's got to have another book to one up that one. So he's just adjusting on the fly.
It seems like that might be part of the thing anyway, because he knows that our culture lets people get away with plagiarizing and this, that, and the third. If you look at all of our authors that come out of the Black struggle in America, a lot of them have plagiarized. So he feels like, well, if you're going to let everybody plagiarize, I'm going to do the same thing. And then when it comes to concepts, hey, fuck it. It doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. It's an opportunity to sell another book. You know what I'm saying? So I'll still offer that one for sale, and then I'll put over a new one that says that I addressed all the issues, which he may not even address the issues, but he has this other edition so that you can make the investment to find out. You see what I'm saying? So it's all part of the deal.
Yeah, correct. That's kind of what we do as Team Osiris is we want to make sure people, it's okay to support a brother or sister in the community, but make sure if you're buying books that you read them, like actually read them. And that's the thing, most people don't. And when you look at when we critiqued Asar's book and when we've critiqued Wijal's book, their books have been out at least the minimum of a year before we critiqued them. We took the time, we did the research, we read them, we cross-examined them. Yep. No one else has spoken about it. And then later on, when we speak about it, now it's an issue because we actually read the book and cross-examined it and bought all the sources and everything and have come to the conclusion. Like when we went out and got Mboli's book and we said, okay, you rely on Mboli over 100 times citing him in your book. Let's go get Mboli's book. And then we get Mboli's book and we have two first translators and we get it translated and it's like, oh, okay. So I see where you're coming from, but you're basically just rewriting what Mboli wrote in his own book instead of just sticking to the citation. But then at the same time, you're oversighting. You could have just wrote a review on Mboli's book and called it a day. So instead, you write an entire book where you copying not only from him but from other people as well to actually sell a book. So it becomes really disingenuous, and I think we've even presented it to other scholars, and they're like, "Hey, maybe this student, because they don't know who he is, but maybe this student, needs to, be properly corrected in the academic field, because at least from being in college myself, plagiarism gets you not only kicked out of school and ejected, but it also harms your future academic career if you decide to go back to school. And once they see that, that's like a remark that's kind of permanent and it stays on you. It's a very bad reputation to have. Yep. But this community doesn't take that serious.
Right. Well, they want to support the bullshit.
True.
Yeah, plagiarism that'll harm not only that, but Oh, I was just gonna say it'll harm your professional career
Go
as
ahead,
well
go
if
ahead.
you wanted to be not only as a student but as an author. If you want to continue to be an author, now you got
Right.
this black cloud hanging over you too.
Not only that, when you plagiarize, that is intellectual property. While it's not a crime to plagiarize, you can be sued. So keep that in mind. Like that's something that
Right?
you need to understand.
You can
If
catch you a
a
civil
publishing
case.
company, right, a publishing company will contact you and say, "Hey, because of this evidence that we found in your text, we either need you to pull the book completely from all publication sources, or you need to release a revised edition." So where there'd be a lawsuit on your hands. So it's serious. Most people don't take it serious, but it is.
Yeah, it is serious, and they ain't gonna be playing
And
about that revised version either. They gonna have to review that revised version.
but like sometimes it feels like people like to be pioneers, and apparently lately they wanted to be pioneers into the definition of the word Kemet. So apparently it means the land of Athribis. So all the Egyptologists in the world, they have missed that for a few decades, and they came up with that. There's also that issue of Meduneta being Meda Mbale or whatever. And maybe you've heard about that, but is he saying that Niger Congo is closer to the Meduneta than the Coptic or something like that?
Yeah, he's saying Bantu, not necessarily because he doesn't agree with Najikang. He doesn't agree with those language classifications.
Mm.
So yes, you're correct in Najikang, but for him specifically, it's Bantu languages. He's saying Bantu languages are closer to ancient Egyptian than any of the Semitic languages or any of the other Afro-Asiatic languages, but most importantly, more than uh, the language that was adopted later on by the Greeks, and it's because the Greeks had adopted the Egyptian language, and it's being Coptic. Because of that, Mboli specifically states that because they're non-African, Coptic is not an African language. Even though it is, and it is from the Egyptian, it's just that because of influence, you have this direct line of borrowing, and you have a direct, what's called a sister tongue. So it's there. The connection is there. If you look at Coptic, you can see where they have matches with Middle Egyptian as well as Ancient Egyptian. It's just that he doesn't want to accept that because of a race issue.
I see. Well, and as far as I'm concerned, Coptic is the latest phase of Medu
Yeah,
Neter. I don't see how the Bantu languages can be closer to the Medu Neter than the Coptic. But if he got that from Mboli, I understand. But there's this issue of people having titles that they haven't earned. There is a in this conscious community, it needs to stop. We have people who call themselves doctors. They have not earned any doctorate degree, not even a honorary one. There is this example of Ali Muhammad. He was on Saneta's platform, and he showed a degree, a doctorate degree allegedly, and there was a spelling error on it. And that's how people
yep.
were able to determine that it was fake because there's no
Embarrassing.
spelling mistakes. And ever since then, he has not retracted. He has not made any amendments. Senator never addressed that. And it looks like the community at large did not address that. So that has been going for a long time. We have many people who call themselves, there's Dr. Walter Williams, who claims that the Meduneta has not been deciphered ever since 1992. And he explained that over 2 pages. So Egyptologists in the world, they are all wrong, but he's right because he broke that down on 2 pages. But does he have any doctorate degree? Because people call him Dr. Walter Williams.
my knowledge, I don't know what he has. If he does have a doctorate, I don't know what he has a doctorate in. I know that he went to yeah. He is a. I know he's a professor in the George Mason University, but I don't think he's.
Well, if he's a professor
Man,
at
I
a
like Dr.
university, then
Walter
it's
Williams.
possible. It's possible.
But you don't necessarily need to have a doctorate to be a professor. You can have a master's and then do
Mhm.
that.
All
Let me
right.
see.
Yeah, Team Osiris is asking me for my receipts on Sarah Suit and Fetty being a high school teacher, and I just can't find that information right now. They like, Chris, we need some receipts on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, let me find these receipts and stuff, man.
But really, I wish that this unearned, I don't know if that's the word, but these titles that people have not earned, I wish that it will stop. Really, it's
Yeah.
it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all.
Did Dr. Clark have a degree?
No.
I think he had a honorary degree. That's why.
Oh, yeah. Honorary. Sorry. Yes,
Yes.
honorary.
But I think Dr. Clark admitted to not having a degree, if I'm almost sure.
Yeah, he doesn't take his honorary degree as one would take a literal doctorate degree.
No, he's a doctor to me, in my opinion, though.
Understood, but
I respect it.
yeah, I understand that. But if you do that, you open the door for other people to do the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And that
You're
at
right.
this time and age, you don't want that. I can understand where you're coming from because of his position and the effect he gave to the people, but
Yeah.
you got to kind of keep your biases in check with that. You got to say, hey, no, he
If
has
it's not
honorary.
allowed here, it's not
Yeah, you're
allowed
right.
here.
Correct.
You're right. You're right.
But
And
most
I've been here.
I'm not giving you
Go ahead.
saw
Go
that
ahead.
status, though. I'm not saying that, but just Dr.
Mhm.
Clark.
Right.
But lately, I've been hearing people saying that Dr. Ben apparently was not totally honest about his academic qualifications. What is that all about?
As far as him being a doctor,
Well, notably, but usually I read that in comments. I might overheard that during one live stream, but I can't remember which one. But many times in writing, I see people typing that. So it looks like it might be some sort of taboo issue. I don't know.
well, that Dr. Ben title is considered a like a pen name, not necessarily an actual doctorate. It's just more so like his author name, if you will. But I know he was a professor part time somewhere. I think it was Cornell. But no, he also taught at New York. But I think as far as him being a doctor, I think that's more so like his pen name based upon him writing books.
Yeah, it doesn't take away from his scholarship or the amazing work he did.
No, not at all.
But like I said, he did teach in schools.
And so, well, T.I. goes to schools and tries to teach too. I think he's just there so people can laugh at him. I always say, man, T.I., don't you know you being laughed at? Like, come on, man, go sit your ass down. Please go sit down. Please go sit down. I'm begging you here. So yeah, man, Shaka. So that's what's up. This is Tim Osiris, man. This is how they get down. It's methodology.
Yes, thank you very much, brothers, for being here. I mean, with the metadata, I've talked with many people who follow Walter Williams' claim, and it's a shame because sometimes it feels like people are trying to find out things that we will never know, and just because there's some things we will never know, then they want to dismiss a whole language that was in use for thousands of years altogether. But if people give it a little try, and I'm not of the opinion that people have to study the metadata, but if you want to know about a particular culture, then the language is the key or the heart of a language. Is a fundamental part of a culture, and it
Indeed.
just makes it easier. And learning foreign languages helps a lot. I happen to know a couple, and I'm learning more,
Mhm.
but I'm just claims. But when I hear people who have a large platform or following, like Southside Seti and Young Pharaoh, when those two also claim that the metadata has not been deciphered. So, to whoever believes that because someone that they look up to said so, try to have a look at it, try to have a go. It's not that difficult. And I suspect that there are some people who just don't want to learn it and they rather say that it hasn't been deciphered rather than say, I don't want to learn it. I don't want to go through the time and pain
Hmm.
and struggle of learning it.
Interesting. That's a good point.
Yep. I think the reason why he, I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here. I think a reason why he probably came to that conclusion is because there isn't enough information about that language to be known. It's not enough, and I think that's why he maybe can make that statement. But over time, even with the information we have now, it is a language. It's just, again, it's a royal language, so it's not the language that the people would actually speak. Let alone could they read it, being that they were not enabled to write or read. So uh, I think that's something we have to keep in mind. But I think maybe because of the lack of having enough information on it would be maybe why he's making that claim. But ultimately, it is a language.
It is a language indeed. And that's why that's the main thing that I want people. Non, j'ai pas fini. Uh, but that's hold on. That's the main thing I want people to remember. It is a language, and with the Hebrew, there was a reconstruction effort, but people don't say that it has not been deciphered. And not only there was a reconstruction effort, but I cannot go into much details about the Hebrew. It's not a language that I'm familiar with. But the people who have studied that language, I'm sure they will confirm that there was a lot of Yiddish influence. So really, it's a language. And besides the pronunciation, there's the writing, and it has a meaning. There's a system, there's a grammar, there's a vocabulary, and it's
Mhm.
more or less consistent. So I want people to remember that.
Is everybody there still?
Yeah,
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yes.
yeah. I think you get a different understanding when you look at these texts in the Hebrew or the Arabic. In my opinion, a lot of times it kind of alters the perspective on the books when you look at it in the language.
Well, like I said, when it comes to linguists and things like that, lingua francas in different languages, I'm not really a lot of that is over my head. I'm not a linguist, so
Right.
I can't speak on those things. I'll research it. I'll begin to
Hmm.
research it. I know I've been talking to Melvin about that, etc. But it would be wrong of me to try and sit back and act like I know what I'm talking about when I don't.
Right.
It's not fair to
I,
people.
I know it. I know with Hebrew. I know it probably it got a lot of rules to it, but that Strong's
No such thing as
Hebrew
Hebrew.
Hebrew dictionary is pretty all right as far as getting to the root of the words.
No such thing as Hebrew.
No such thing as Hebrew.
That's
Okay,
Aramaic.
well, you said it's Aramaic.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree with that. because that's the tongue that they say Jesus ultimately spoke, Aramaic.
It comes from the
Spoke.
Assyrians.
What you say, bro?
It comes from the Assyrians.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It was dubbed the national language by Darius around 500 BC because the cuneiform text was too hard to decipher.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the people couldn't speak it. Like,
I know
Correct.
Darius did indeed. He did make it the national language, Aramaic. He sure did. Hmm. Yeah, but it looks different though when you read it in the Hebrew. Like when you coming into the book of Genesis and it's talking about waters, and then the Hebrew says Tiamat. That takes on a different character a bit.
But Tiamat was also a Canaanite god.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And it's funny.
Tiamat.
Go ahead, brother.
No, Tiamat also means primordial waters. So, it kind of takes on a different character when we can see that they wasn't just transmitting the idea of water, but actually primordial waters.
But it was a
If it's,
Canaanite god.
I
Just like
believe you.
El, actually, the main Semitic deity, El,
Yeah,
was a Canaanite deity.
right.
And Allah is nothing more um,
Feminine.
than Al Ilah, a contraction of Al Ilah, literally meaning the God.
Yeah.
I, I told Chris,
AILAH.
I told Chris a while back. I was like, man, their God has multiple personalities. You know?
You don't know who you want to be.
Right?
Yeah, I
Like
just say
he switches up personalities
it's
like
one God
almost
with
every
many
book.
many beautiful names. It has many attributes. And
So does
that's
Ra,
how
but
that's
he's not good enough, is he?
no. Ra is my God too. I believe in Ra.
Oh, so
Ra
you're
is
pantheist?
Allah. Ra is Allah, in my opinion.
No, he's not.
Uh,
Oh,
hey
he is
man,
impossible, man. Nah.
it is. It is. It's in Arabic. It's Al Shams. It's the sun, and it's
So,
Shams.
so hold
It's
on.
an
Are you
attribute.
saying Al Shams is an attribute of Allah?
No, I'm saying that's the terminology in Arabic
Told
for the
y'all,
sun.
we right back to that
As
West Semitic
Shamash.
stuff.
Shams,
It's still the
that's
language. It's just the language.
that's the language. It means the sun. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what does it have to do with Allah?
Well, he said only because the brother said Ra. I'm only using the Arabic language for the same concept, or the Most High, ALAA. That means Most High. So I didn't say he is the Son, but that is a manifestation of his will and his mercy, in my opinion. It's a
But Allah
manifestation of
teaches
his
only
mercy.
worship no other but Him.
That's right. I
Okay,
worship the
that's
one who
not.
created it, not the Son itself. But it is a expression of his mercy.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
All right. Well, brothers, it's been 2 hours and 53 minutes, so I
No
think
doubt.
we're gonna call it a day. But I really wanted to thank you all, and I hope that our people will get some clarity. I hope that there will be less falsehood because there's just so much unnecessary falsehood going around. Everybody can learn. We were all once learners, and learning is a lifetime process. But unfortunately, I think all the falsehood that's around the generation, which is supposed to learn at a much faster pace than us when we started. We didn't have the internet and so on. I'm assuming that all the people here are from my generation and older. And so they're wasting a lot of time with some claims that just um, make them be all over the place. But with the study of history and using primary source, preferably, and understanding history, then it will be better. Of course, the main thing that is slowing us down as a people is the theology. And because people have belief, then whenever they come across some historical claims, they want to tie those claims with some alleged facts. But hopefully, people, even if they have a belief system, they will be able to make the distinction between their faith and between facts. So, really, thank you once again.
Thank you.
I might be live streaming tomorrow, but to everybody, feel free to subscribe to the channel, which is my art forever, and also click on that notification bell so you will know whenever we will be live streaming. And if anybody disagree with some things that I said, then you are all welcome to come in and talk about it. Nobody's perfect in this world, and really, yes, that's about it. So, brothers, thank you very much for the information that you've been sharing. Thanks to all of you, Asiatic Black Men, Grand Activists, the MVP, Brother Anthony and Daniel Heru, and the brother Trix who left also.
Yes, thank you for having us on.
Thank you, Brother Shaka. Peace to you.
You're welcome.
Peace to y'all, the brothers too, man.
You're
Peace,
welcome.
Team Osiris.
Thank you. All right.